Hello, friends. Welcome back, ladies, gentlemen, and NBs, to Warui Deshou, a bad anime podcast. But we think that can be good if enough effort, love, and fun are put into it. I am the subtle doctor leading the charge today. I'm a musketeer on the front line. With my newly discovered rifle that I'm a little bit afraid of, but I trust in my general, who's commanding me, that it's going to work, and we're going to destroy these knights. I'm also a shirtless beefcake with strange facial hair. I think that general leading me, who I'm putting my faith and trust in, is none other than the guiltiest gear, the chromiest dome, the hardest working man in pod business. It is Shadon. Hello, Shadon.
Sorry, I just felt like sniffing some glue because I figured it would put me in the proper mindset for this particular show we're covering. Also, some of the characters in this show acts like they've sniffed glue as well, so, you know. It all fits together.
What is the show that you're speaking about that we're covering today?
This show is Drifters. I think the subtitle for it is A Battle in a Brand New World War. Although I would personally prefer to call it a Fate Zero effort.
Oh, so God, just give away the game completely on the front end about how you feel about this. I would prefer Fate Stay High.
That actually works as well. Yes, that does work.
That's the one I like. Yeah, we're talking about Drifters, and it's not episodic analysis. We've been doing that for quite a while, but we're gonna.
If we did this episode,
can you imagine? Oh my goodness! This was 2016.
The only way I'd be able to cope with doing this episodically would be if I bought a bong to use while doing it.
Goodness. So I take it that you are not feeling good about this. That you're not looking forward to this podcast.
Before I go into deeper,
somewhat adrift.
Before I go into deep, we've got like a section laid out later for spoiler-free thoughts and all that. But I'll just quickly sum up by saying this isn't the worst thing I've seen, not by a long shot even. If I had to use one word to describe it, it would be lame. That's really my feeling on the outset. The only other thing I'll mention as well is you folks at home can't see what I'm seeing right now on my computer. We're doing this via Discord call, and my avatar is currently set to Foss from Land of the Lustrous. That scene where they are looking blankly in the water while someone's like talking to them and just kind of like, You all know it if you've seen that show, and it so perfectly sums up my feelings and my mood towards Drifters. But let never be said that I can't see some nice little moments here and there, some stuff I actually did like in the show, and B, that if done differently, it could have been a lot more entertaining, or actually entertaining for that matter. But we got what we were given, and it's just meh.
Well, with that blasphemy out of the way, let me point out how I feel about the show, which is that I think it's fucking awesome. I really, really like this show. By no means is it a masterpiece, and it's not going for that kind of thing. It's not your prestige anime drama, Rakugo, this ain't. But it's a very different sort of schlocky, kind of like off-kilter, fun, violent thing. It's very much its own thing, and it's a thing that I like quite a bit. Although I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's very, very excellent at what it sets out to do. And I found it very entertaining. So, as usual, we are going to be on opposite sides of the ring when we're talking about a show. This happens a lot, so maybe this will make for interesting discussion about Drifters. Shadon, do you have more thoughts before we kind of set the table and talk about what the show is and who made it?
I mean, when it comes to Drifters, my opinion is no thoughts, head empty.
Okay. Thank you, Goku. Here we go then. Drifters is a dark fantasy story. It is originally came into being as a manga by Kota Hirano. You may know him as the author of Hellsing, which is a way more popular work by him that's received, I think at this point, 2 anime adaptations. There was the Gonzo 2003, and then you had the 2010 OAV Hellsing Ultimate. I think it started in 2010, but it took a long time to come out. I don't have the page up for that, but but yeah, that's sort of considered the definitive one because I think it was made after the manga was finished. And whereas the first one kind of went off and did some of its own stuff. But we're talking about Drifters, not Hellsing. Drifters is still ongoing as a manga. It has not concluded. It began in 2009, running in seinen magazine called Young King Hours, and by OURS, like yours, mine, ours, not the time, hours. There are currently 6 tankobon volumes of it, and there's a few chapters that are untankobonized at the moment. There's close to 10, something like that. And so apparently this is a thing that is being written sporadically I'm trying to do quick math in my head. 10, 12 years it's been going, and only 6 volumes. So that works out to a chapter every couple months, something like that. It probably won't be finished for a while. But it's a popular manga, relatively speaking. I mean, it's sold, I think all told, the volumes have sold 1.5 million copies in 5 different languages, according to Wikipedia. It's been nominated for a couple Taisho Awards, which is a very prestigious manga award. Yes?
I'm just laughing because, again, speaking to how the sausage is made here for people listening to this podcast, just prior to us actually starting recording this, me and Doc were catching up because we hadn't spoken to each other in a little while. And I was mentioning my grievances at YouTube content earning hundreds of thousands of views when it amounts to nothing more than fan wank and bullshit. And so Doc reading out the numbers here for Drifters, as someone who has now seen the show, it just felt kind of simpatico.
Okay, I see your point. However, so it's not just a popular thing. It's critically acclaimed because it was nominated, like I said, for these Taisho Awards. And I mean, I'll just read you some of the winners of these awards. Very prestigious manga award. Chihaya Furu has won it. March Comes In Like a Lion, Silver Spoon, A Bride's Story by Kaoru Mori has won this, which is a beautiful manga. Golden Kamui, Beastars, Astra Lost in Space, and Blue Period have won some of these awards up against some stiff competition over the years. So, I mean, although, for instance, Ancient Magus Bride never won one, only nominated. Erased never won one, only nominated. There are certain years A Bride's Story was nominated but did not win. So, I mean, it's an honor to be nominated for this kind of thing. And you might say, well, Attack on Titan was nominated, but that's just a taste thing. You can't completely say Attack on Titan was total and utter meritless dreck. I mean, it had its fans.
I mean, hey, it certainly does have its fans. It's putting a US senator through the ringer right now, as he rightly deserves. Topical commentary. Da 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 da. Fuck that guy, by the way, just so it's clear how I feel about that.
Sure. I remain blissfully ignorant of this entire topic.
Good. Keep it that way.
So, moving on, we're going to talk about the anime adaptation of Drifters, not the manga. The anime adaptation, season 1, I should say, because hey, at the end of the final episode, it says stay tuned for 20XX season 2.
Wow, I don't know if to take that as the fact that the creators were really big fans of Mega Man, or if they were just being really, really honest about when they expected to get around to making season 2. Maybe both.
Well,
why not both?
It could be. I mean, I think it's I think it's because like they're waiting on just more of it to be made. I think they burned through most of, if not all of the material.
Really?
So
well,
yeah.
this is not endearing me to the idea of the manga anymore, I must say, if the majority of the material that we got in the anime is what's already out there in print, and there's like shreds of it left. But anyway.
I think that's the case. Mark at Vermillionaire, let us know if we're wrong. Drifter superfan Mark. Also, Patrick, Surreybot, Drifter's fan. Let us know if we're incorrect about this.
Oh, I expect they'll be both be saying I'm incorrect about many things, but
sure.
Yeah,
but you're ready for that. You're steeled.
I'm indifferent, is what I am.
Okay, so this anime adaptation, it was made in 2016, and boy, I thought I had it pulled up here as far as like the studios go, but I can't find. So Hood's Entertainment is the animation production, a studio I've never heard of before. But you know,
I have, and I can't.
That's
quite,
whatever.
I can't quite place where I have heard of them.
Interesting. I know NBC Universal was associated with this because I saw their, English or alphabet name in the credits, and I was just like, I can't believe NBC Universal is associated with this property, and yet, and they are. But yeah, 2016 anime adaptation came and went. I didn't really hear too many people talking about it at the time, although it had its ardent fans. And it's been probably, I think, forgotten about largely at this point, because if it was not, I suspect it would be on a streaming service somewhere, but Crunchyroll let that one go. Funimation doesn't have it. It's sort of out there waiting to be license rescued by Discotex someday.
Mm-hmm. I have a sneaking suspicion as to part of the reason why this show will not appear soon on streaming services. But okay, pre-warning to what I'm about to say, because I was going to bring this up anyway when we talk about the dub. So this is completely rampant speculation, and there's no basis in actual facts or evidence. Take it as that and nothing more. Did you watch the show dubbed, Doc?
No, neither time. So I watched part of it while it was first airing, but fell off of it, and then I watched it all the way through this time. Neither time did I watch it in English.
Okay, so I didn't watch it dubbed, but okay. I did, however, watch the ending all the way through, where it included the credits. I've got two things of note here. The first of which is I want to give a shout to Patrick Seitz, who actually did script work on the dub. Patrick Seitz, well-known voice actor, has done, amongst other things, Ragnar the Blood Edge. I think he was also... Why is this not coming to me? I'm sure there's so much stuff he's done that's just not coming to me right now. But you all know who he is.
Sure.
He also did script works on Steins Gate stuff as well, actually. That's where I remember him from, where he played the role of John Caesar. So, nice little factoid there. This is the sugar that's going to go with the bitter medicine that follows. There were two names that I spotted in the dub list, one of whom I thought, oh, not this fucker. And the other one I thought, oh no, she had to deal with this fucker. I am, of course, referring to Vic Mignoga and Monica Rial.
Oh.
I don't recall the character that Rial was playing. I think Vic was playing Gilles de Rais or someone. I don't remember.
How appropriate. Do you know what Gilles de Rais is famous for?
It might not have been Gilles de Rais. Don't take that. Like, this is my poor memory here. I should really have pulled this one out. It might have been the spear throwing guy.
I'll look. I'll check.
So while Doc is checking, I'm just going to mention that, again, this is entirely speculation, has no basis in fact. I do not proclaim to be telling you any objective truth here. But one may wonder after what happened, and so it's clear where I stand on it. Vic, well, what does his name rhyme with? Man couldn't even put up a decent, offense in his own fucking prosecution, etc., etc. It should become as no surprise that I think he's a wanker. Point being, though, I can only wonder if maybe that might be the reason why it's not appeared on streaming services lately. Because it would include inevitably the English dub and would include him on it. And maybe they're wanting to avoid the controversy on that. Again, must stress rampant speculation, no basis in objective reality, purely, whatever. But yeah, I couldn't help but spot that as I was going through the credits, and I thought, oh no. Especially given that Paul Monica had to fucking work with the guy on this, I can't help but wonder if maybe her experiences with him were... a part of them happened while making this show. I don't know, pure rampant speculation. Must keep stressing, but I just spied that. I was like, ugh.
So Vic is actually Count Saint Germain.
That's the one.
Who's a different character. He's not, Gilles de Rais is...
Gilles de Rais is something else, I'll say that.
Yeah, Gilles de Rais is the one who's with Jeanne d'Arc, in the middle of the show. He kind of does this thing where Count Saint Germain is more like prominent at the end of the show. And Monica Rial plays Easy, and those two are never in any scenes together in the show. So here's hoping that they never had to be, in the booth together, making stuff, or even at work on the same day. But moving swiftly on. Let me just talk about a couple of the people who helped make the adaptation. Director of this project is Kenichi Suzuki. And Suzuki still working hard. He has made a bunch of the Cells at Work anime adaptations. He directed both seasons of Fairy Gone, the James Beckett favorite, Fairy Gone. Got to direct a little bit of Hellsing Ultimate. So there's some crossover with the author there. Series director for Stardust Crusaders and the first JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. He's associated with a lot of JoJo's. Series director for the first season, series director for Stardust and Stardust Egypt, and the chief director for Stone Ocean. Done a couple Gundam things. So yeah, that is Kenichi Suzuki. And the head writer for this show, Drifters, is Hideyuki Kurata, someone whose anime writing I like a lot. For the most part, he's done Made in Abyss, which is the thing that I associate most with Kurata. Both the script for the movie and was the head writer for the TV show, wrote half those scripts. Maria the Virgin Witch, an excellent, super duper underrated TV anime that came out middle of last decade. Read or Die, wrote the story for the manga and wrote the scripts for like the OAV, which is amazing. And I haven't seen the TV show adaptation, but he worked on that. Samurai Flamenco, he was the head writer for that. A lot of people consider that like one of the best shows of the last decade. But he's also worked on some stuff that people don't care for as much. Like he's the head writer for basically the entire run of the World God Only Knows franchise, which is something that if you ever watched it, Shadon, you would hate. I mean, I just know that you would hate it with the Fire of a Thousand Suns.
I have never even heard of that until now.
It's like kind of cordoned off on High Dive. So that's why you probably haven't seen it. It's
in High Dive quarantine. It's behind a frosted glass.
It very much is.
It has a daily team of scientists who just poke the glass with a long stick so not to provoke it too much.
Oh, the head writer for Tokyo Ravens. That's a new shonen thing that I've been wanting to check out. Both seasons of Yukinon favorite Oriimo was the head writer for that. And let's see, there was another thing. Wrote some stuff for the Grisaya animes. There was a thing I wanted to mention just for you because...
Oh, no.
It made me laugh. Oh, Goblin Slayer. It's associated with Goblin Slayer.
I'm so sorry.
And of course, yeah, I know. And of course, Drifters.
Mm-hmm.
And also, we'll mention that some of the scripts of Drifters, like 3 of them, were written by Yosuke Kuroda.
What? Like, it's been a long time since we've mentioned his name, so in the dusty caverns of my brain, but didn't we say like he was like good, or am I misremembering? No, wasn't he? No, wait, wasn't he the guy who did good stuff, but then also did Phantom?
Yes, that's correct.
Wow, my memory's clearly not as moth-eaten as I thought.
Wild that. So you've seen, what was it, you that was watching the Dirty Pair movies recently?
I've watched the TV show, but not the movies yet.
Okay. I think he's associated with, if I'm not remembering this totally incorrectly, I don't see it. I don't see the Project Eden credit on this page, so maybe I'm just misremembering. I think I'm misremembering. Yeah, I think I'm thinking of someone else associated with Phantom that directed or worked on Dirty Pair Project Eden. But Yosuke Kuroda has still done a bunch of really good stuff. He's like been the head writer for My Hero Academia for a number of years. Wrote this boxing anime adaptation that I really like called Ring ni Kakero. Some Saint Seiya stuff. Done a lot of stuff that I enjoy, but also Phantom. But the thing that I remember him for most is actually Trigun. He's the head writer for Trigun. And he wrote every single script for Trigun, which is interesting because, Trigun also ran in this seinen magazine that Trigun Maximum, I should say, ran in this seinen magazine that Drifters and Hellsing ran in, and a lot of people associate Hellsing and Trigun because they were, they came out roughly around the same time, 4 years apart or so in America. Dudes with long, sort of red-colored trench coats that bore sort of similar looks, sort of Yasuhiro Naito-ish design, long pistols, and they ran in the same magazine, and Yosuke Kuroda worked on that. There's a link here between Drifters and Hellsing and Trigun, which I thought was kind of fun to bring up.
I suppose I should put on the table right now so people are clear. I haven't actually seen Hellsing. Neither of them. The only experience I have with Hellsing is through the process of osmosis, in which I've just heard about it over the course of many years, and watching an AMV that used Hellsing footage once back in 2007. That's it. That is the subtotal of my Hellsing experience. I will hopefully eventually get around to watching it. I don't want to let Drifters dissuade me from giving it a try. I'm gonna be fair.
Yeah, I think Ultimate is on Funimation, and that's the one you should watch. I mean, that one's really good. The only thing, in my opinion, worth kind of going back to the Gonzo one for is just watching the ending song, or maybe just listening to the ending song. That Mr. Big song is really freaking good. That's the only positive thing. I mean, there was like cool stuff in it, but all the cool stuff was done better in Ultimate, and it was just it didn't go off the rails like the first one really just kind of petered out, and it's what Gonzo was known for doing in the 2000s. My friend is just coming on strong, coming in hot, and then really petering out. So,
just like this show. Well, actually, no, that's giving too much credit. That's actually being too nice to him, in my opinion.
No, come on. You didn't like the beginning? Like the beginning was like you were like, it was a blitz of
it was a cock tease,
bizarre concepts. Stop it.
It's a cock tease is what it was, but we'll get to that.
Okay, well, do you think you can summarize the plot without being overly negative?
Yes.
On purpose?
It won't take very long. Although,
well, that's fair.
The only problem is I don't recall some of the characters' names, so I might have to invent some of them. So we have this dude.
This should be fun.
We have this dude who dresses in red, and he's a swordsman. And he's a swordsman who really likes collecting heads. He is, however, not the star of the new Highlander movie, as much as he wishes he was. He dies. Gets, turned into a pop-up pirate toy because people stab him with tons of spears. and he wakes up in a weird, like, white corridor. I mean, a fate worse than death is like, finding you're now working a dead-end office job, I suppose, so maybe it truly is purgatory. But this dude is reading a newspaper, like, something happens. He gets teleported to this alternate universe, so now he's officially in an isekai, poor bastard.
Yes.
And he ends up encountering two other characters, one of whom I also don't remember the name of. Is it Yoichi?
Okay, so the main character is Toyohisa.
That's the one.
And Toyohisa, like you said, when he gets like by this dude clad in white reading a newspaper at a desk called Murasaki, we don't learn that for a while, and he shoots him through a door which takes him to this alternate universe where he goes to this sort of rundown castle, like you said, where he meets Yoichi. You're right, it is Yoichi. And who?
Oda Nobunaga.
That's right. The first time ever he's been in an anime.
Yeah, everyone's favorite go-to. Everyone just fucking loves a bit of Oda Nobunaga. Even I knew of that guy prior to Drifters, just from the process of osmosis.
Very famous historical figure in Japan.
Famous enough you'd think to be likable enough as he was, but oh boy, we'll get to that later. So, this world... Oh god, this is where I just realised I've got to start explaining some other stuff, including who the Black King is.
Well, why don't we explain the concept? I mean, like, so why is someone who died at the Battle of Sekigahara, which is in like the late 16th, early 17th century, sort of encountering Nobunaga, who should have been dead at this point, I think, and Yoichi, who fought in a battle that was centuries earlier, like in 11 or 1200. What's going on? My best understanding of this is that they have been drafted here to fight in a war as drifters versus a group of people known as Ends. I freely admit I'm not entirely clear on what distinguishes one from another, and that we later learn there's apparently some sort of office politics water cooler fight going on between between what's his name, the guy you mentioned before, who's constantly Murasaki, and this girl who looks like Misa from Death Note, except more purple. Yes.
So I don't like,
and she's looks like she's cosplaying someone, but I don't exactly know who.
I'm surprised she didn't.
Yeah, that's easy. Go ahead, make the.
Well, I was going to say, if this was on a streaming service, I'd expect the words "paid promotion" to appear above her every time that she appeared, because she looks like she's wearing clothing entirely from Hot Topic. I'm just going to say. By the way, why they're doing this? What exactly is going on? Well, if you heard our discussion on Death Parade, where I was like they went a little too much into the why without giving us enough to explain it. Same problem here. It isn't explained. I will, however, grant, as much as I otherwise probably shouldn't, that this was intended to be the first season of, I'm assuming, several. So I'm willing to let that slide, and it's ultimately not all that important. It is a means to a bunch of ends, as it turns out.
Exactly.
And some drifters as well.
Exactly. It's like a sort of perfunctory premise, or sort of explanation, rather, to get to this idea of historical figures from all different times colliding on a battlefield. Not just any battlefield, but a battlefield populated by fantasy, species, mythical creatures, all that kind of stuff is sort of swirled around into a delicious stew with an exotic blend of herbs, spices, and flavors.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of shit. That's not me being facetious.
Literally.
I would say that's not even me being facetious about the show. That is
you are being facetious.
No. There's not enough beer in my beer for this. But anyway,
one thing I'll say before we move on from it, the thing that distinguishes drifters and ends isn't anything essential to them. They're all these people that have been at the moment of their death whisked away into this alternate world, timeline, whatever. The only difference is like the ends all bear this grudge against the world, against humanity, and they all seem to either factually or just believe they have been like the victim of some great injustice. Mm-hmm. I think you look at all of them and be like, they all probably died in their minds unjustly. They were put to death for the, reasons that were wrong, and they want to get back at humanity, and they're being used by Easy to get back at the entire world, humanity and others in this world of drifters.
I have two things to say to that, which I find amusing. So I was actually looking up Oda Nobunaga's history just to try and get some background on the guy. He was assassinated by one of his best friends, from what I've read here.
Yep. Mitsuhide.
So I would have thought, indeed, Mitsuhide actually appears at the very end of the show as a big dun 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 dun. And all I could think to myself was, hold on, if when you said that, I was like, wouldn't Oda therefore be an end? Unless that turns out to be a big twist later, but whatever. But the more pertinent thing, and the thing I was alluding to before, is the ends are led by a enigmatic figure in a cloak named the Black King.
Yes. The Black King. So great.
So,
who's
again,
the Black King?
I need to mention again how the sausage is made when it comes to this podcast, because when I started watching this show, Doc asked me, have you figured out who the Black King is yet? And this was when I was about 2 episodes in, and I was like, not yet. And then it took me about another episode. And I should stress, by the way, the show never reveals who he actually is. But once you think about it and get some pretty obvious visual clues. The show does lend you a hand or two. The Black King is Jesus Christ.
The one and only.
Mm-hmm. He is risen again.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And he's got his, restorative superpower as well here. That can be put to use for good or ill.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, that's a thing. And
who would win? So Jesus, which general do you think would win in a fight? Oda Nobunaga or Jesus Christ? Who would be the better strategist?
Well, you know what's funny?
A question the show aims to answer.
Put a pin in that for later, because we're not going to discuss that as it's the deadliest warrior thing, but we're going to discuss that in this show's politics. I hate to use that word for a show like this, but also I would be lying if I said this show wasn't politicized in some form or another. Just wait and see. We'll get to it. But yes, Jesus Christ is rocking around his Black King get-up. He wants to free all the metahumans, and for him, that seems to be a bunch of pigmen, like they're out of Willow or something. Meanwhile, the others...
Were they called metahumans in the subs you watched?
I might be getting it mixed up, because I was recently playing Shadowrun, where non-human races were called metahumans, so I'm just using it as a big umbrella.
Okay. I think demi-humans.
Demi-humans, that was the one. Yes, you're right. Demi-humans, you're absolutely right. So anyway, Oda and his gang, in the meanwhile, after they meet up, they're basically on a long mission to take down the
revolution, man.
Yeah, the
Jesus is gonna he's like, you know what? Humanity rejected me, so fuck all of you. I'm going to take these other races that you all think are subservient to you.
Bit of a U-turn.
We're going to kick your ass.
Bit of a U-turn a bit of a U-turn in his perspective, because again, my knowledge of the Bible is limited to what I do when I am absolutely desperate for to be put asleep in hotel rooms, because they always leave a copy in the side drawer. But he came back and he was like, all your sins are absolved. I forgive you all. Be chill later. Basically.
Yep.
But I'm guessing when he finally did die the second time around, he was he had a change of heart. He recanted on his deathbed. Whoops. Bit of unfortunate. We can at least say Drifters 1345 is the new chapter in the Bible verse. So there we are. But anyway, so yeah, they're our heroes, Oda Nobunaga and his cronies. They end up helping a bunch of elves to overthrow a town. Clearly showing it some, admittedly this was before Witcher 2, but it gave me Witcher 2 vibes with the opening town of Flotsam, because of course the humans are raping, pillaging, and plundering, and collecting the women for their, for use as sex slaves.
Wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
The opening town in The Witcher 2 is called Flotsam.
Yes.
Is there a sister town called Jetsam?
No, but there should have been.
Yes.
So now that we've
carry on.
We have scientifically proven the Witcher franchise is built on false ground because it doesn't have that in there. Anyway, they free the elves and all that, and then they go to free the dwarves. They have run-ins with some other drifters along the way, including Hannibal. I am not, of course, referring to Lecter fame here. I am referring to Hannibal of Carthage, I think it is, or maybe I'm getting it wrong.
Yep, that's correct. No, you're correct.
The guy behind the most impressive, or one of the most impressive maneuvers in military history, and that is not by accident on the show's design. The show has an emphasis on not just individual combat ability, but also tactical and strategical brilliance. Hence why Nobunaga's in this, because he was not known for being not necessarily known for being a frontline soldier, but rather a tactician. Boy, howdy, does it make a big deal of that. So he's in there. There is also Billy the Kid at one point, if I'm not mistaken.
It's not Billy the Kid. I thought it was Billy the Kid the first time I watched it. It's the Wild Bunch. It's the Sundance Kid, and Butch Cassidy is the other guy with him, his companion. So famous outlaws, but Billy the Kid, Sundance Kid. I suppose it could be all the same to you. Outlaw cowboys.
It's a famous cowboy, really.
Yes.
That came first, and who slotted into that role came second, I suspect, in the writing process. So there's them. There's also this Japanese fighter pilot who appears. I don't recall his name, and he's completely irrelevant to the plot. So
he doesn't. He has to come into play later, right? I mean, surely.
Yep. There's also a Japanese aircraft carrier featured at some point, and again, I don't know who the captain of that is.
He's just in the credits of the last episode.
He's in the
That's
opening.
The only play.
This is why I do not call this show a cock tease lightly because of that. But there's other stuff that I'm going to complain about later.
You get action. You get action. It's not a tease in that you're not left with blue balls. You get action. It's just there's more to come. There's a second date. There's more that we haven't gotten. But it's not a total tease.
Do you want to remind me when the next season is due to come around?
Well, that's but you're calling it a tease unfairly.
What year? I just want you to say the year.
That time when that's 1990X when Fist of the North Star is set. No, this is to 20XX when season 2 is slated to come out. But I just want to say that I think the cock tease is unfair because that would imply that you gotten zero satisfaction. I'm not saying I don't think you can call everything as incomplete a cock tease because that implies no satisfaction.
I'm
the
referring.
show delivers quite a bit. In my opinion,
I'm referring
throughout.
more to the broad concepts and what I wish it had done. Maybe cock tease is a bit histrionic of me, but anyway, I'll explain that later. So to round up the summary, the dwarves are freed. The dwarves build muskets because muskets are the shit. Nobunaga is all about muskets. Originally a Portuguese import, as history shows. So, oops, can't attribute that to Japanese ingenuity entirely. But anyway, No,
I don't think the show does either. I think he's wowed by them, and be like, "Oh my god, I wish I had these when I was, when I was alive."
He did have them when he was alive.
Muskets are just firearms.
Muskets, firearms, I think they're called something else in the... I'm actually looking over his...
That's interesting. Because he acts in the show, he's very much oh my god. But maybe it's just modern guns that he's so... They don't look very much... Yeah, he knows about black powder. You're right. He knows what elementary rifles are. I think he was just wowed by the more advanced firearms he saw from, Sundance Kid had a Colt 45, and then they had a Gatling gun, which he was drooling over. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think you're right on that. I don't think it attributes them to being invented by Japan. The musket, they were invented by dwarves, don't you know?
Well, they did bring in a musket from the real world, through which they use as the framework.
Right, yeah. Whose was that? I don't even remember who they got it from originally.
I don't recall, but there is also the specific mention of the Tanagashima in the sub. So believe me, the impression I got was this is very isn't Japan awesome, but we'll get to that later.
Oh yeah. Oh, I will never dispute that is totally correct. That this is like is the right word jingoistic here? This is a very rah.
I have a different word.
Japan is pretty freaking awesome.
I have a different word for it, and it's propaganda, but we'll get to that later. Now,
I don't think it quite. Let's talk about it later.
I'll get to that later. Okay, so basically, they end up overthrowing the Kingdom of Orte. Toyo has a fight with some dude who can like send ghosts in. He throws soup. Yeah, he throws soup in his face. There is a character. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say. So, like, the reason that fight is significant, much more so to Hijikata, is that sort of Toyoshida. Is it Toyoshida? Yeah. No, Toyohisa. I always want to say Toyoshida. Mm-hmm. Toyohisa. Like I said, he died in the Battle of Sekigahara. So he was fighting in the conflict that Oda Nobunaga basically started but died in the middle of, and one of his retainers, Tokugawa, kind of finished when his side won, and I believe Toyohisa's side lost, if I'm not mistaken. But like, then Tokugawa set up the shogunate, which sort of was the kind of ruling governmental structure in Japan until like the mid 19th century. And the first clans that began to rebel against the shogunate were located in Satsuma. And I believe the Shimazu clan, which Toyohisa is part of, was one of those. And so you have this person like, and Toyohisa mentions this in the show, like, oh, did my descendants do something to you? Like, well, yeah, they rebelled and were part of what toppled the shogunate, which had lasted for centuries at that point. So, and Hijikata was part of the shogunate's like police force, the Shinsengumi, which, you know, Rurouni Kenshin did a lot to kind of popularize in anime fandom over here. And so he's part of that unit. So sort of battle with a lot of historical implications. And I think that's like where the appeal lies in a lot of the show, is like knowing kind of history, to get both like kind of like, oh, isn't that cool? Or isn't that hilarious? Like they make some sort of historical jokes that, you know, and I don't claim to be like some big history buff or whatever, but just from what I know, there were a few things I'm like, oh, that's funny. That's clever.
Mm-hmm. But yes, the show ends with the Kingdom of Orte being overthrown. The Black King shows up to mix it up with the Drifters very briefly, but then tells Misu, whatever his name is, to retreat. I don't quite get why the Black King would be fighting against the Drifters, given they have the same goal of like, hey, let's not all be massive racists, but that's something I suppose the later season will solve, and also just because Ends versus Drifters, whatever. But yeah, that's really about it. That might have sounded like a very thin and very recital of the plot, but my honest thought on it is that for 12 episodes, it feels like so much of it just kind of passes over very quickly. It feels like
it really does just end. I mean, it just like the last battle between Hijikata and Toyohisa ends, and it's just over. Like very much like, oh well, we'll definitely get more of this, and we still haven't.
Yeah,
but, it seems like he needs to write faster. Does Koza Hirano
better as well? But anyway. I mean, imagine if you like ended a season of an anime in the same way that you end the first of a two-parter from the 1960s Batman series, Bad and West. Will Oda Nobunaga finally make the perfect musket? Will Hannibal ever remember what it's like not to be a senile old fuck? Tune in next time for Drifters. Na 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 na. Drifters. That's basically what it felt like. So, yeah, that's the summary of the show, and I'll be getting into more of my thoughts on it soon enough. I don't have much else to add, really. I mean, yeah, there is some sequel bait at the end, I suppose, like with the aircraft carrier guy. He pops up. There's also two pirate captains who I'm sure are meant to be like significant characters, and probably are in like the next chapters of the anime. But I'm just like, I don't know, and I don't care because the show's over.
Yeah. I guess one thing we can mention, even though we've summarized a lot of the show, I mean, I don't think we've, totally given away the game.
Oh, I forgot to mention boobs, by the way.
Oh, right. The mage girl.
Dizzy from Guilty Gear.
Yeah. Hey, there you go.
No, she literally does. Her character design is literally Dizzy from Guilty Gear.
Olminu.
Yes.
Or as Oda keeps calling her, Boobinu.
Mm-hmm.
Which is hilarious. Laughing.
At least
so hard about it.
I will create the show this. At least it's up front in the opening for the two reasons as to why she exists in the show.
Oh, yes.
That's
look, the case.
I know I've complained in the past about fan service and all sorts of things that probably made people rather annoyed at me. But I will always credit a show where at least it will be honest with itself and its audience. Like, this is the reason this character exists. We know it. You know it. And we're not going to be, like, ashamed of it, really. So I'll mention that, right. The reason that like she's in there is because of her tits, and then I will leave it at that.
So this is actually a nice segue into what I was going to say. And before we end the spoiler-free section for people that want to, listen to the spoiler-free stuff and then watch the show and then come back or whatever. I think there are some caveats to talk about before we say or I guess you wouldn't say this before I say go have fun and enjoy yourself. Because I do think it's a super enjoyable show and a really a light watch almost and just a ton of fun. But I think, there's some things that could bother people.
The gay panic.
I can't blame you. Excuse me. I couldn't blame you if it was the thing that you were bothered by. So why don't you elaborate on what you just said?
The gay panic. Okay, two specific things. There is Gilles de Rais, the French aristocrat.
Do you mean Count Saint Germain?
Whichever. I keep getting them mixed up.
Saint Germain is like the sort of one who's very effeminate and made up and has the two assistants.
Yeah, those two. There's a lot of humor about them being queer and strange and like all that sort of stuff. It's gay panic. That's what it is. And then there's also a scene later on in which I think it's their army or their men show up, and they're all like half naked, ultra buff, and Nobunaga's like, I didn't realize they were like this.
Thieves or whatever, yeah.
Yeah, and look,
that's where it got it sort of, I think, went over okay, this is a thing now, huh? Show. Mm-hmm. Was before that episode, really the only thing that you kind of had in that vein was Toyohisa would sometimes be like, are you a dude or are you a lady? I don't know. There's a lot of people like that. And that didn't really sort of bother me. I didn't think it would bother too many people. That seemed rather innocuous. And you had Saint Germain kind of doing his thing. And yeah, he and his assistants were a little camp.
A little.
But there's camp there, but it's like that's something that I'm not going to get offended on behalf of other people for that. When I know that other people enjoy that or identify with that or think that's fine. You know what I mean? Like it's not by its very nature something offensive. At least I didn't think so. But if I'm more than willing to be corrected on that score.
Yeah.
But like what you said, like when it's later on, it really seemed to in a single episode lean into that. And Oda in particular was very much like talking about those people and them and kind of characterizing them, their kind of people, big air quotes, in some disparaging ways. And so I was like, I sort of was not expecting the show to like take that next step, because it seemed like, okay, a centuries old character has some outdated views. Like, that's not the kind of humor I would write, but it doesn't seem strictly out of bounds or something that's like super offensive. But then it really did kind of push that button much harder in a way that I was sad about.
Yeah, I have two things to say to that. The first of which is I'm going to reiterate a long-standing thing I've said every time we've discussed queerphobic or transphobic humour. I think it's fair to say, like, it didn't bother me personally as a cishet dude. But the thing that does bother me is that it's also just incredibly lazy. I've said this many times before, and I'll repeat it again. Like, queerphobic or transphobic humour is lazy. It is pathetic. It is weak effort. And I don't care who you are, how much you're getting paid, whoever you may be, like, come up with a better joke. Stop doing the same shit over and over again that's been done for decades, if not centuries. It's just such low effort nonsense, regardless of its offensiveness. There was recently a clip floating around on Twitter of, like, you can absolutely do jokes about, queer people or trans people, but you need to come up with new material that, one, isn't offensive, and two, actually requires some thought. And this is humour that doesn't require any thought. It's lazy, and it's shit. The second thing I will mention is, you mentioned, like, how, I could see, like, someone of Nobunaga's age, or, like, not his age, but rather from that time period being this way. Historical, like, authenticity shouldn't be a factor. Unless you're literally writing a deadly serious story in which, he's being queerphobic or transphobic, and that's part of the plot, and is viewed appropriately. In the, like, if it's like basically a documentary, then you're writing a work of fiction otherwise. So ultimately, it doesn't matter. I mean, you're also writing a work of fiction in which Oda Nobunaga and his fellows were revived after death in an alternate world to fight in a world war against Jesus Christ. Pretensions of this being historically or accurate or authentic are nonsensical, and they don't matter. So anyone who wants to defend the shows, like Humour saying, like, he would probably act that way, I'm like, it doesn't matter. That's not an excuse. It's not a defense. It's just lazy humour. That's all it is.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think, especially the stuff that happens in the penultimate episode. Like I was saying, I think there are there's earlier stuff where, Toyohisa is confused about what gender people who you're talking to are. And for whatever reason, that's very important to him, probably because he's very used to it. Like, I could see, again, I would not write humor this way, but I can see the draw of someone saying, like, let's, like, put these two, like, cultural views together and, kind of laugh at the differences. Like, it's not something I mind. Again, it's really, and I'm talking about, like, stuff he said to Jean and stuff Toyohisa said to Saint Germain as well. But yeah, when Oda leans into it, and that's where I felt kind of weird about it. And also, we talked about Ominu. Like, this show is, like, walks in the tradition of stuff like, I guess Hellsing is another example that the author wrote, and, like, Baki and I guess Fist of the North Star to some degree, like, a lot of shows that, like, there used to be, I don't know if people use this word anymore. Gar, Gar used to be a word that people used to describe super duper manly media. And Drifters, I think, is playing in that space. And unfortunately, like, a lot of anime that people classify as gar is not very kind to its female characters, and there are no ladies in the show that like. I don't know, the two ends, Jeanne d'Arc and the Russian lady who's only in a couple scenes, who I can't remember, Romanovna.
I completely forgot about her. I'm not even.
They just seem like they're like, you know, they're there and they're not totally there, I guess, as sex objects, but like they are super duper tragically flawed and clearly going to die early deaths. And then the rest of the ladies in the show are just there to be ogled. And
I wouldn't say that applies to Jeanne d'Arc, but I mean, God.
She's just super duper tragically flawed and she's going to die early. And like, you know, I just don't, she just doesn't, I don't know. It's historically accurate, fair, you know, well, let me walk that back. Her backstory was a more or less accurate reflection of what we know or what we're told. But like, I guess it was an interesting kind of next step for that character as in historical fiction. But I don't know. It just sort of, it didn't strike me as none of the characters are super deep or get a lot of development per se in the show, man or woman. But I don't know. None of the female characters, really sort of rose above like, you know, tragic minion level to me.
I mean, for Jeanne d'Arc in this particular show, this iteration of her, I mean, I'm not even going to be like critical of what I'm about to bring up here, but it's not another revision of the same old shit we've seen in Fate or the like, where it's, hey, she's got long hair and big boobs, don't you like? And sure. that's not even me being critical of that. I mean, like I said, with, you know, how I felt about Olmiru and just that, hey, the show's honest. Like, let's be honest about what people like about characters like Jeanne d'Arc in Fate Grand Order or whatever in gacha games, because they've got nice art. You know,
right?
I'm not going to begrudge that. So I'll credit the show at least for not falling down that old cliche. But she really was just there to be an opponent, and that's kind of it. Could have replaced her with anyone else from fiction. You felt you're so inclined, I would say.
Well, it just seemed like there was some of that stuff that we were talking about earlier, where sort of her kind of tragic death, both in her first life and her super deep flaws in the Drifters world, are somehow like tied to inextricably the fact that like I wouldn't necessarily say she's androgynous, but like, you know, there were people like Toyohisa wasn't the only one to ask that question. Like when she was being put to death, you know, in the anime anyway, the onlockers were like, what kind of genitals you got? Like, what you got under there? Are you a man? Are you a lady witch? You know what I mean? And, you know, again, it just seems like, well, we've been here before. This is a tropity dope.
Yep.
That we've seen a lot. For
a show about a world war in a brand new world, so much of it feels very rote, unfortunately.
Right. And it's a total, like, kind of agreement with what you were saying earlier about, like, you know, revising attitudes and perspectives in these characters given new life. I mean, they seem to be a lot more progressive on race and fantasy races anyway, which is like another can of worms I don't even know if we want to get into. But people have problems, understandably, with like fantasy races and traits and like them being segregated and cordoned off. All that is there. We mentioned you mentioned the gay panic. I mentioned misogyny. I think the big thing for me, or at least the most important one of these caveats to mention, is what the show, what the characters, I guess, have to say about Hitler and how Hitler figures into the story.
God, I forgot about him.
Because, like,
yeah,
this is a goofy story, and it's meant to be just like, you know, an author having fun with a playset. But the show has weird things. Just some of the characters say things about Hitler that are just strike me as so odd, and like there's just not that much context given. It's weird. So like the evil empire you were talking about in the summary, Orte, was founded by Hitler, who is a drifter. No idea why he got pulled into this fantasy world, but hey, he did. He founded Orte. Some of the characters refer to him as father, which could definitely see, if you found that troubling, because he founded that empire. And at least one of the characters, I think Abe no Seimei, the leader of the Octobrists, the head mage man, I think he's like, or maybe it's Saint Germain, or maybe both of them. I can't remember, but one or both of them is like, yeah, good old Hitler, he came here and like really like, fixed this place up. Like the trains were running on time and stuff was clean and like, the infrastructure was good. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. And
you mean that
Hitler's not in the anime as a character. His portrait is around in a couple places. Mm-hmm. And Oda also is, at one point, I think Oda's like, oh, fuck this guy, who cares? So I wouldn't say that there's necessarily apologia of him, but there is a sort of like, I don't know, like the way he's sort of mentioned is, or entreated by the characters. I totally understand if it's off-putting. It's very devoid of sort of the historical context of like, the things that he's chiefly responsible for and remembered for in history, rightfully, I think. So like, it's strange. It's very, very odd.
Yeah, I will at least credit the characters for recognizing that what's happening to the elves and dwarves is bad and should be stopped. Even though it also doesn't come across as the most convincing thing from any of them, it just feels like the stuff they want to do rather than because it's the morally or ethically right thing to do.
I think that's actually a really good observation. I think the drifters are not these like good guys. It's sort of like they want to conquer and they have a love of at least the three Japanese main character, warriors. They have a love of conquest and battle. And so like, how can the show act on that and give them that to do while, but also make them the good guy and not like, evil warmongers that only want bloodshed.
They're freeing the elves and the dwarves, not so that they can live in peace, but so they can go to war.
Yep.
That's the thing to know. And the other thing I'll bring up is what you're saying there about Hitler and like all the good stuff he did. Let's be clear here, and this is funny enough going to tie into my point about propaganda later, of which I am of the opinion Drifters is a little guilty of. A lot of the modern understanding of Nazi Germany and it being like this all-encompassing juggernaut is complete bollocks. It's a fiction that the Nazis themselves created and cultivated through films like Triumph of the Will. So this thing that whatever his name is stating as fact, like, even if we take it diegetically that happened in the show, it wasn't true in reality. So
yeah, they're just talking about Orte, not Germany.
But I don't buy it because, as I say, the actual Nazi regime was run shittily and terribly. So no, I don't buy that for a second, and that's why it smacks wrongly to me because it's not even like accurate to the person he was. Like when I think of Hitler in terms of works of fiction, I think of what I saw in Wolfenstein: The New Colossus, where he was just on Venus pissing and shitting himself and being like, and just being this pathetic creature that he is, because that's what he was. Let's be clear here.
That was a great portrayal. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, very disappointed I didn't get to shoot him myself though. You can, but it's a failure state because you die when all the other guards come and get you. But then again, maybe I suppose with benefit of hindsight, killing Hitler there and then, like, I could probably have been happy with the game ending. But whatever. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Wolfenstein: The New Colossus. Although, funnily enough, Wolfenstein: The New Colossus would have served as a wonderful template for what I wish Drifters had been. So it's funny, everything ties together. Anyway, let's carry on.
Yeah, I mean, those are the big, like, caveats that, just want to give fair warning. Some of that might have been a little spoilery, but probably no more so than the summary that we've already given. Yeah, so like let's close off the non-spoiler section, and we can. I don't know. I guess we've already kind of given our overall thoughts and recommendations. I guess I would say, like, if you enjoy a lot of the anime I mentioned before, Gar, hyper-violent-y stuff, and also are a person that enjoys the concept of fate more than the way it is executed oftentimes, which I think is where I fall on Fate. Despite I did enjoy the visual novel, but I think the idea, the notion of fate, rather than the thing that exists in the real world, is something that really appeals to me. And so the fact that it's just kind of taken very nearly whole cloth and kind of remixed a little bit, put in here, does it for me in a big way. So if you like those two things, I would say that this will be like a fun way to spend your time. Inconsequential, not a lot of, deep meaning or anything like that, but like it's to me just hilarious and fun largely.
Mm-hmm. If you want my non-spoiler summary, I found this show to be dull, boring, tension-free, derivative. You brought up Fate. I honestly can wholeheartedly recommend any of the animated Fate shows from the 2010s onwards. So Fate Zero, Unlimited Blade Works, even the movies. I even the Grand Order movie that I watched, the very first one, that was better than this.
The Netflix TV show, was it Fate Apocrypha?
I have never seen that, so I can't.
That was good. That was really good. I enjoyed that a lot.
I can't comment.
Astolfo, baby.
Everyone loves Astolfo. But I will say, like, I like you and Fate, funnily enough, I'm enamored with what I wish Drifters had done. We're going to get into it in more detail later, but you and I have mentioned many times about the idea of this show being batshit crazy. And that's not an inaccurate label, but to me, it's batshit crazy in all the wrong ways. I'll explain that later, but suffice to say, if you have seen its analogues in any of the like modern Fate shows or films, I wouldn't bother watching this, to be quite honest. I can't bring myself to recommend it, but conversely, while we have mentioned that there is some questionable shit in this show, it is not even close to being the worst thing I've ever seen either. It feels no. It feels very middling, I would describe it as. I mean, no one episode of this, for example, is worse than the end special episode of Wonder Egg that we covered earlier in the year.
Woof.
That's definitely true. None of them are close to that. And I'm talking about...
All right, I have a game. Can I play a game? Let's play a game.
Yes. Sorry,
Thank you for that.
It had to be done. Like, if we're going to introduce a new game segment on our podcast, we need to have some sort of, like, jingle to go with it. And a smoke machine, but admittedly, I think that might be lost on the podcast audience for obvious reasons.
Is this show better or worse for Shadon than Guilty Crown?
Oh, I like how you phrase this because it makes me think of like The Price is Right, higher or lower than or lower than a 10. No, it's better than Guilty Crown.
Okay,
for two reasons. I'll give two quick reasons.
You want to elaborate? All right,
two quick reasons. One, it's shorter. That's always a big factor. And two,
God, Guilty Crown is 24 episodes, isn't it?
Yes.
And the fucking Lost Christmas movie.
Yep, Lost
Jesus.
Christmas, I gave you my void. Ugh. And secondly, the protagonist, while I didn't care for them, was also not actively insufferable. So congratulations for Drifters, you're better than Guilty Crown. Congratulations for clearing one of the lowest of bars.
Okay. Drifters, better or worse than... Oh my god, I've forgotten. I always forget the name of the show.
It's probably for the best that you've forgotten it.
That we covered. We covered it in the mid-COVID. It was the Erica 7 person doing another one. The blue-haired girl and
it's swirling my brain.
Man.
It's swirling my brain. A
man.
really bad memory, but I can't quite recall it offhand.
And it had David Bowie, and you hated the David Bowie character.
Oh, this is really, really lost on me. Is this something that's going to make me wake up in a cold sweat, yelling it at the top of my voice?
Probably.
Oh, God help me.
All right, so I'm going to look up.
Don't go looking up David Bowie. You'll find some good stuff there.
No, not David Bowie. I think the script writer no, it's not this person. Oh, I said Daisuke. It's Dai Sato. I said Daisuke Sato. So Daisuke Sato, Listeners.
Oh,
Listeners is what it was called.
Oh gosh. The Listeners wasn't even bad. It was just the most milquetoast shit ever.
Those Drifters better or worse than Listeners?
Better because it'll be more memorable. I mean,
bingo.
Listeners, I mean, to be quite blunt, are so utterly forgettable we literally had to pause the podcast to find it. But if you ever say, hey Shads, what was the anime that featured Jesus Christ leading a bunch of pigmen somewhere? I'm never going to forget that, even if I ultimately didn't like the show. So yeah, by virtue of that alone, Drifters is the superior show.
Better or worse for Shadon than Aka 13?
Okay, let's be clear here. I was very unfair to Aka 13. I'm going to say worse because, in all honesty, I think with the benefit of hindsight, I was overly critical of it for no really good reason. I was just being petty. And on top of that, I listened to Anime is Lit's podcast on that, which is really fucking good, by the way. And it let me see a whole other side of that show that I just didn't appreciate at the time. So, to be quite honest, I was being very unfair to it, and therefore... But that being said, even if I hadn't changed my opinion on it over time and still had the same view that I held now, the one that you're probably thinking of, where at the time I said it was like a sleep aid because I found it very boring, I'm still going to say it's better. Partly because it's better looking than Drifters, because Drifters at times is flat out ugly.
It is. You can't really defend it.
Yeah, I mean, I posted a tweet where I compared one shot of Toyo to the picture of Jesus that was repaired by the cleaner lady, because it looks exactly similar, drawn to me. That's how ugly the show is. And also the colour grading on it is shockingly bad. Some of it is way too dark in places. Yeah. It's not a good looking show. And also, just generally speaking, Aka is also just more pleasant. So, yeah. Even if I was using my original, overly negative, overly critical, judgmental, arsehole opinion of it, it would still be best than Drifters.
Okay. You're a traitor. Let's get that out of the way. Better or worse than, for Shadon, Crystal Triangle?
Worse, because Crystal Triangle was deeply amusing.
Crystal Triangle rules. I think Crystal Triangle is better than this.
Crystal Triangle features the only anime guest appearance of Gabe Newell. So how can it be bad? the man who
that show.
Yeah, that was that show. Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yep.
Oh my god. Okay.
I'll throw one your way. Better or worse than Kabuki Show Sherlock?
Better. Without question.
That is not a difficult one. I mean, that's the thing though. Drifters, as I say, is a middling show. It is, to me, a promise not kept, potential not realized, and most of it. Oh,
I have a controversial one.
Do you have a zinger of one?
This is incendiary right here.
Go on.
This is going to make people mad.
Throw that Molotov cocktail out there, my man. Do it.
Better or worse than Death Parade?
Worse.
Better. I've said it. It's better than Death Parade. I enjoy it way more. And I like Death Parade well enough.
You know what's actually kind of funny now that I think about it, though? Aren't they conceptually very similar shows based on their overarching plot lines? You die and you get sent to an office somewhere or a bar, and you have to compete.
And you have to you participate in some kind of competition combat against someone.
Man, can we
sure
do a crossover? Just have Oda Nobunaga turn up at the fucking Death Parade bar and play a game with some random 18-year-old girl who died tragically from a bicycle accident, where he's just playing bowling with her or something. Actually, no, he's too gropey. That's why I can't find that idea fun. Fuck you, drifters. Anyway, never mind. But I would say better than Death Parade, but I'll respect your opinion by saying it is worse.
People are going to be so mad at that opinion.
Hey, I'm not worried. They're going to be mad at you, not me.
I know. I'm
just going to be here, with one of those reflective mirrors, sunning myself, just enjoying it while you're getting hounded to the ends of the earth. What's that, Doc? You in trouble? Oh, sorry, too busy, mate. Just working on me tan.
Being attacked by people are coming through my mentions to pitchfork me.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's take a really quick break and then we can get on with spoilerific business.
Indeed, we also have Discord questions to cover as well, so we'll be tackling those in due course. Don't adjust your internet browsers, MP3 players, radios, or whatever strange device you're listening on. If you're getting this on the Oculus, just take it off for 5 minutes, go grab yourself a drink. We'll be right back. And we're back. Thank you very much for not adjusting your radios, VR headsets, or whatever future device is streaming stuff directly to your brain while you're living in the off-world colonies of Mars. This is Warui Deshou covering Drifters. Let's crack on. So, we've done all of our various summaries, analyses, and talks about, creators, spoiler-free stuff, the content warnings, the problematic elements that we want to, including, of course, Hitler. Because there's never a time Hitler's not problematic in some form or another. I mean, he's Hitler. The fuck did you expect? So we're firstly going to go into Discord questions from our lovely Discord members. We have 2 this week, and they come from Pirate Prince Rackham. The first of which goes like this. There are quite a few drifters introduced that we barely get time to know more about, as the show tends to stick with the main 3. Which of these sparingly used drifters would you most like to have seen used more in the series? I'll let you answer that one first, Doc.
Okay. I am going to say... I'm tempted to say Jeanne d'Arc. I really, for all the conceptual criticism of the character type, I do enjoy when she's on screen, getting mad at people and incinerating villages. But I think my answer, I'm going to have to go with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Because they're in it just enough for me to be like, oh, these guys could really be interesting and fun, especially Butch Cassidy, the non-mustachioed one. The one that looks like, the one that's looks more like a traditional anime character. Looks like a Get a Robo pilot instead of a cowboy. But yeah, I would love to see more of them, mix it up, be wild and crazy. Although, I mean, maybe that will be an overload because Toyohisa is pretty nuts on his own, but you can never have enough of that hot-blooded protagonist type for me. So yeah, get Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, give them some more guns and let them run wild. The Wild Bunch.
Mm-hmm. My honest answer is none of them, because as cool as it was to see those 2 turn up for a minute or however long they were in the show, this I think ties into a wider problem I have, and I didn't find any of the action really all that engaging or compelling. So it's not so much that I'd want to see them come back or let's even say drifters appear like historical characters who aren't even in the show at the moment, but I would like to see later. Because it's all going to end up with the same problem in my mind, which is I didn't find the action all that interesting. I mean, Toyo, whatever his name is, like, he takes a bunch of heads like it's Highlander, but so so what? I just didn't care. I however, because I can't really give that as an answer, I'm going to go with yours as well. Just say like, hey, they had a Gatling gun, and I'm always down for the minigun in whatever flavour it turns up in. So yes, more Gatling gun, please. That's the drifter I want to see return, not necessarily the person operating it.
Just the gun.
Just put the gun back in there. Why not?
I mean, there are some good ones here. I mean, we didn't. Surely, Scipio Africanus would be around more to do more fighting with Hannibal and more scheming. Romanovna, I believe is her name, we mentioned before. She's intriguing, but we barely get to see any of her. So, like, there's barely enough there for me to even want to see more because I don't even know what she is. That's why I went with the Wild Bunch.
Oh, you know what we do need? We need more Rasputin, but we need him to be... Because it's fucking Rasputin. The name alone is the most evil shit, but he needs to be, like, more Grima Wormtongue evil. Like, I want him whispering in Jesus' ear, like, maybe you should kill them all. Like, then he... Okay, again, admittedly, I'm making shit up now that doesn't actually exist in the show proper, but, I mean, that would be neat, wouldn't it? Just because Rasputin is like even in like history, like people seem to always associate him with being like the slimiest motherfucker. So lean into that. He's just gonna be there tapping Black King and like, I really don't think you should give them the loaves and fishes, my sire. That water, don't turn that into wine.
Because I mean, there's like a point in the show where the Black King, like something, a piece of his body falls off or something like that, and a soldier sees it, and telepathically he's like, "Don't tell anyone about this." So you feel like there is a scenario where Rasputin could sort of make a move to seize power.
Oh, who
manipulate the Black King.
Who does need to turn up in this series though, just to die very quickly. When the Black King realizes who he is, and then you get this guy's reaction of, "Oh, I'm so fucked." I am, of course, referring to Longinus, the Roman soldier who stabbed Jesus in the side while he was on the cross, and he just turns up. He's got no idea what's going on, and then the Black King Jesus just goes over and says, "I know you."
There's none of. Neither Easy nor Murasaki would pick Longinus. I'm fairly confident. It'd pick Mitsuhide, but Mitsuhide Mitsuhide overthrew Nobunaga, so got something going on.
Mm-hmm.
All right, what's the next question?
The next question is one I actually can't answer because it relates to Hellsing, and I've not seen Hellsing. Unless you want my joke answer to refer instead to Castlevania, but I don't think that'll work. It goes like this. Since he was created by the same author, do you think Alucard would be a drifter or an end?
Alucard. I'm going to say drifter. Come on.
I'd say so too, from what little I know of him. Come on.
Drifter. What do you think about Alucard from the Castlevania anime on Netflix?
In general, or just been being a drifter?
Oh, no. What's your general thoughts on him as a character? What do you think of his? Do you find his voice acting as sleepy as I do? No. What do you think of his Did you think he'd be a drifter or an end?
I think it depends on which season you're looking at, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Exactly what I would say. I feel like we're talking season 3 end.
Definitely. Although I suppose,
season 3 almost ended me. So,
side tangent. You know how you said like we're going to have all these disagreements. I actually quite like season 3, but
yes,
I mean, anyway, that's a discussion for a different day. I need to watch Hellsing at some point, just for the historical context more than anything else, and also because I have the honest feeling it's probably I would probably enjoy it a lot more than I've enjoyed Drifters. Like, just talking strictly about myself here and my own subjective view of things. Like, I think I would.
You
like
would.
it more.
You would. I mean, I think that you would enjoy the production more because it's an OAV. It just looks a lot better than Drifters ended up looking.
Yeah,
that
that
aspect
also helps.
alone, I think you would enjoy it.
That definitely also helps. Right, that takes us to the end of our questions for Drifters. Thank you very much to Bracken for popping two in the box there. And now we're going to move on to the full-throated, full-fat, full alcohol, by volume, spoilerific discussion. I'm not sure how one could talk about the spoilers all much because we've already given away the big reveal that isn't even really, I suppose, brought up in the show of the Black King being Jesus Christ. But there are some things that we can definitely talk about that relate to the events. Do you want to go first or shall I?
I don't know. I mean, why don't you go first?
I will seize the opportunity, and here's the thing, right? I didn't care for this show, but that doesn't mean there weren't things I didn't like in it, and I'm going to mention two specific things. The only two specific things that immediately come to mind. Actually, no, I'll say three. So, first off, let's talk about a very specific moment, I think at the end of episode 3. They've got the elves working for them, and at the end of the episode, our main trio decide to pose for them as it moves towards the credits. And it's the dumbest fucking thing ever. It's like a JoJo pose.
Yes.
But completely unearned for the show itself, because JoJo's posing is like a part of the style of that show. But it's still got a really strong chuckle out of me. And I think it was intentionally meant to be a jokey moment where they all struck a pose to show how awesome they are to the elves. And the elves are just fucking confused. Like, what are they doing? Why are they doing this? I'm like, ain't that a question, buddy? I don't know, fucking clue. But I genuinely like that moment.
Isn't that and that's sort of a historical joke in some ways, right? Because isn't that they refer to the pose later if we're talking about the same one where they're like, well, Toyohisa, you're the leader. And he's like, what are you talking about? And they're like, you sat in the middle when we all posed. You were in the middle.
Sounds more
and
like
so
a
you
Red
took
Dwarf
the leadership. You took the leadership seat, and so he's officially the leader because he took the middle seat in the pose.
That's funny in its own right, to be fair, just because it sounds like a comedy joke from something like Red Dwarf or something.
Yes, exactly. Totally.
so I'm okay with that. The other thing I'm going to mention that I liked, I know that we said about Alminu and the fact that she's basically there for 2 reasons and 2 reasons alone. But I want to bring up something about one of her contributions to the show, which is that she has a magic spell in a Japanese paper charm that summons pillars of stone from the earth. Now, I'm going to expand on this later when I talk about the problems I have with this show as propaganda. But one of the things I like is that the characters, particularly Toyo, use these charms in interesting and creative ways to accomplish certain goals. One of which is there's a bunch of soldiers with super heavy armor on them coming towards Toyo and his bunch of elves, and they're not going to be able to break that armor with their bows and such. So what he does, he has Alminu land the charms in a circle around them to encircle them, and at that point they just throw a bunch of explosives in that enclosed space where those soldiers are, and they all get decimated. And it's established early on that Alminu uses that spell for defense only, so it's just basically to summon it as a barrier for cover. And there's another scene when Toyo is fighting Jeanne d'Arc where she makes one of these barriers rise from the ground to protect them, but then she puts one on the back of the barrier she has summoned and uses that to create a horizontal wall of stone that propels him forward so he can get close to Jeanne d'Arc without being burned alive by her flames. And there's another one where they use it to create a set of stairs up the side of one of the castle walls. That is really fucking cool. I like that a lot, and I like it for 2 reasons. One, it's that kind of thing I've said before where it's a power that has a lot of creative uses. It's like, I mentioned JoJo's. And so I'll bring up again, it reminds me of like how, you know, in not necessarily the same way, but with the same idea, that Crazy Diamond can use its abilities to fix things. And then, of course, it's how Josuke uses it in creative ways that allows him to win the day. That's what makes those fights fun, because you get to see really cool things happening, which also have like a logical consistency to them, and where powers have flexibility and creativity behind them. And that, by extension, makes Toyo and Obunaga and all the others look cool, because you get to see how they are applying their intelligence and their creativity to something they're otherwise unfamiliar with, but grasp the concepts of quickly. So, really nice little bit of action thing. Like, I didn't care for the action, generally speaking, but I liked that because it was innovative and creative. Fairly established rule of what it does. We use in creative ways. So, good shit. That I liked. But I want you to put a pin in the thing I said about making the characters look awesome and cool for when I get to the propaganda bit. Just keep that in mind.
Oh, all right. I'll put a pin in it.
And the final thing I'm going to mention is I have to confess, I liked Nobunaga's performance throughout much of this, because he's just completely over the top.
He's so like, evil sometimes.
When he's looking evil and like grinning his ass off at what's happening and just reveling in the carnage and mayhem, like, it's not quite camp, save for the ill-advised comedy inserts, which is something I'm going to talk about separately. But there's just something wonderfully malevolent, like he's really enjoying it, and it makes it fun. And so I liked his performance, and that's probably why I remembered his name as opposed to Toyo and whoever the fuck the Archer person was. I don't care about them at all. Because I was engaged watching him like talk about stuff, even if ultimately I didn't find what in the end what he was saying all that compelling. It was his delivery of it and the way he was animated that's probably the highlight of the show.
But Yoichi was so dreamy. How can you just throw him under the bus like that?
Who?
The Archer.
Who?
Yoichi.
Who?
The Archer. Yoichi. The Archer.
Oh no, Doc's skipping. Can someone reset the vinyl player?
yeah, hit the TV. I can't decide whether I want to start off in the negative and then veer positive. I think that's what I'll do, because I got the feeling that you are going to be mostly negative.
What a surprise.
About the show. So I'll begin by talking about the things that I didn't care for. And so you mentioned that you did not care for the action generally. And I cannot fault you for that, because I thought this show, should have been a lot more kinetic. This is same director as the first 3 26 episode seasons of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And I remember enjoying the action in those shows. So I feel like we should have had a right to expect some at least well-directed, decent action here. And some of it's good, and like there's just not a lot of it to go around. There's not enough of like, I don't know, Fate's servant fights.
You mean one-on-ones between drifters, where
with the historical. Exactly. Not enough of that. But like, I don't know, maybe that's intentional because the show sets itself up as not really having much in the way of stakes for the character, for the historical characters' lives. Doesn't really seem like any of them are going to die. So
to me, it feels like they're doing it because they're bored.
So perhaps, having the duels, would have highlighted that, and they maybe wanted to hide that and have them function as sort of, if you're looking at this as a strategy game, commanding units, and then have all the kind of other human grunts, because a lot of people do die, but they're just, none of them are the drifters or ends. It's all native humans, elves, dwarves, and what have you, to that world. in this war that these drifters and ends are waging. But yeah, the action I thought generally speaking was pretty lacking. I agree. It could have been something more, and definitely a missed opportunity with the show. I mean, I think that the fights, there is something more going on with them, especially in the early episodes, than just the bare sword fighting that I think the show does well. And I'll talk about that later. But yeah, like the moment to moment combat, 1v1 is really a letdown here, I think.
I'm going to expand on that, and I'm going to say that I don't even think this is the fault of the direction of the show, because as you've rightly pointed out, we have a director with a good pedigree behind them prior to Drifter's creation. So what went wrong? I am of the opinion the material as written is functionally incapable of delivering good action. That might sound a bit holy shit, what the fuck, and I will explain. And this is
presumptuous.
This is going to tie into my later point about propaganda, funnily enough. But
I think I see where you're going. But
yeah, part of the problem with this is I never felt a sense of tension to any of the fights at all. Not the Jeanne d'Arc versus Toyo one, not the Toyo versus whatever Ghostface, whatever Hijikata's name is. Not even with the Archer and I again don't remember the names, but I don't care about the characters. Fuck it, who gives a shit?
Yeah, I guess that was the one, right? Was Yoichi and Jidere. That was actually Jidere did die, so bad on me for not remembering that. But and Dere almost seemingly took out Yoichi, so I guess that was the one and only time where it felt like something of consequence could happen. But you're totally right. There's like a real lack of jeopardy for the main characters.
Yep, whereas in JoJo's, most of the JoJo's fights end with them on the cusp of being annihilated. How many... Like, I mean, I can think of all, like, the Steely Dan fight, the fucking Vanilla Ice fight, for example. Holy shit. Like, two of the Stardust Crusaders, spoilers for an old show here that surely everyone knows about, die from Vanilla Ice's stand, and Polnareff barely escapes with his life. He's bleeding out everywhere. So ridiculous and batshit as JoJo's is, and again, I mentioned before, like, that Drifters is batshit as well, just not in a way that is good for the show, in my opinion. Like, there is no such thing here. Like, Toyo just cleaves through all of the soldiers and just with such effortlessness. Like, he's unfucking stoppable. Which is a sharp contrast to his introduction, and what I think a smarter written version of the show would have emphasized that at various points that he does get injured quite a lot throughout all of his fights, but just shrugs it off anyway. And then you wonder, what's the point where he's going to finally keel over and die? But no, he doesn't even get so much as grazed until the very final fight of the show that he has with Ghost Guy, Ghost Samurai, Ghost Runner, whatever his fucking name is.
Chikata.
And the thing is, you might think I'm pointing this out and I'm going to say that's because the writer's incompetent. I actually don't think so.
No, I know where you're going to.
Put a pin in this. There is a very specific reason that Toyo does not ever really struggle, nor any of the others for that matter, save for the Archer person against Gilles de Reyes. But even then, I wouldn't call that a struggle. And moreover, the conclusion to that fight still has its own result where
totally
you'll see.
Totally.
But yeah, that is why
it's interesting that Toyohisa not only suffers his first defeat, but for his blood doesn't get drawn until he's fighting another Japanese person.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I think this is where you're going.
I'm putting the breadcrumbs out here. I'm just telling you. I'm telling you. But that's why I am of the opinion that it is the writing that is functionally incapable of delivering good action. And this will tie into
the goals. Given the goals of the show. If action requires that kind of jeopardy for you to be enjoyable, which I guess it should do.
Not necessarily.
I think the scenes are fun, So I enjoy them, even though I don't think anyone is going to die. So I don't know if I would say that that's a required element of a good action scene.
It isn't, and I can think of one specific example of a live action film which I always come back to as the perfect thing to bring up in case like this. And I'm of course referring to Commando of all things. Because Commando is a film where Arnie mows down tons and tons of people in that one extended shootout scene in the villa on the island. And he's never once hit. Not once, but it's still great. And I have to admit, like, Commando, like, is just camp farce all the way through.
This has got an element of that to it, I would say. A strong, more than an element. I think it's made in that spirit.
Yes. But, one, Commando is actually funny, even though it's also got some of the worst one-liners ever.
And some steam, Bennett. The best.
Please don't mind my friend, he's dead tired. Such a great line. But I have to, this is the point where I have to really interrogate myself. And I think it is because, as I was watching it, like, Commando's farcical nature is because they wanted to write the cheesiest, most farcical 80s action movie. Whereas I don't think I can attribute the same kind of purity and honesty to the intentions of Drifters because of that element I've been kind of dancing around with the propaganda bit. That, I think, was weighing heavily in my mind when watching action. Because I'll admit, like, there were times when Toyo was, like, cleaving through dudes and taking their heads, and I was just like, this, in other circumstances, I think would be hilarious. Like, especially if he just started collecting trophies from them or something. Like, imagine if he just had, like, them all on a washing line, or like that scene from the Team Fortress video about the soldier who's got a bunch of heads on the fence. Yeah, yeah. I think that done differently, I would have found those exact same scenes not so much great action, but great farcical comedy or farcical action in the same way that Commando is farcical action, rather than The Raid, as an example. But I couldn't
indeed.
But I couldn't get past the fact that, like, it felt so transparent to me why they were making it so that he was just, like, completely and utterly unstoppable.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting argument. I see where you're coming from. I guess, like, just the sense of goofiness of it all overrode everything for me. I don't particularly mind, I guess. Like, I'm not, like, my sensibilities or whatever are not offended by being I guess nationalistic or propagandistic or jingoistic or whatever. Rah-rah, Japan, like, our best fighters of history could mop the floor with these other countries' great fighters one-on-one, or put these 3 Japanese warriors together and they could conquer the world, if that's, and you said it's very transparent, and I agree. I mean, that's what you're going with. Like, I don't know. It doesn't offend me. It doesn't, like, detract from my enjoyment of the story, personally.
Fair enough.
My turn or your turn here?
We've lost track. I'll let you go next. I've got plenty more to say, and I want to keep delaying the propaganda thing as long as possible, just for my own amusement.
Okay. So, like, so we mentioned the lack of jeopardy and the lack of kinetic action scenes. My final kind of big negative of this thing, aside from all the strange Hitler business that we talked about, I don't even know if this is a negative, because it's not a negative for me. But, like, I already alluded to this in our spoiler-free bit, but this show is extremely straightforward. The premise, and once you kind of understand the engine of the show, then it just kind of goes in a straight path to where it's going. There is no twist of the plot. Nothing unexpected is going to happen. There's no real character development, truly, I would say. Everyone is just kind of their historical selves, which I'll just say now, I think is something that is a point in this show's favor over and above Fate, because oftentimes a Fate character from history is just, let's just slap a name on this sexy character design with boobs, and it will have nothing really to do with the historical figure. Whereas, in this one, Hannibal is like an old man, and like the Sundance Kid, or rather, Sundance Kid is this mustachioed cowboy, middle-aged man, and like Nobunaga is like not a lady, which I have nothing wrong with gender bent Nobunaga, but like I think by and large the show definitely in character design in a broad sense, and perhaps even in the character personalities, is just going for like an approximation of what these folks were in history, maybe certain characteristics dialed up, maybe some development, not development, but like, the sort of logical next step for the character given how they met their end. See Jeanne d'Arc and Jesus, like how they would react potentially to what happened, like an alternate version of that. So like, but there's just not any. This is not a show about surprises. If the concept doesn't really do it for you, and you're not really impressed with how that concept is deployed and kind of the milieu of it all in the first, I would say, 4 episodes. Because I think the first 4 episodes are like the best of the show. If that hasn't really done it for you, then you probably won't enjoy the rest of it, because nothing really surprising happens. Just more characters show up, and the Drifters kind of continue liberating fantasy characters, and the Empire, cedes ground and loses. And the ends are bad, and the Drifters are the good guys, and we don't really understand too much about the proxy war that the two, that Easy and the other guy are having. So, if you're looking for something not even deep, but like if you want, I don't know, character development or the show to evolve in some way from what it is at the beginning, is just not going to do that. So definitely wouldn't be for you if you're looking for that.
I need to make a quick aside here, actually, because I've talked earlier about Fate. I thought that I generally like it, but I absolutely will not let it off the hook for things that I would complain about in Drifters. So let me be clear here. I like in Fate Zero, for example, the relationship between Velvet and Ryder, aka Alexander the Great. That's actually a really cool instance of, hey, here's a historical figure teaching this kid like how to like be proud of themselves and proud of their accomplishment. Like the scene in which he died, like, again, spoilers for a nearly 10-year-old show, but who gives a fuck? Like when Ryder is killed by Gilgamesh, and they have like that scene at the end, like it's genuinely touching. It is, funnily enough, not too dissimilar to what happens in the first Bill and Ted movie, except it's not so much comedy as genuine character development. And I love it for that. It's really good. And I will also say, I actually do like to look at, like, let's take Saber, King Arthur, like, the most famous character from Fate. I like what they do with her when they bring in, like, for example, like how if she had the ability to make a wish from the Grail, she would undo having ever gotten a hold of Excalibur and become King of England, just to go live a normal life. Like, that's great. That's wonderful humanization. I really like that. I'm less enamored with the idea of, hey, Shiroremi, a random 16-year-old boy, you get to fuck the King of England if you say the right things to him. And also, and this will tie again into the propaganda element, because I'm really building up to this, I actually really enjoyed, for a little bit, until I stopped watching it, the spin-off show, Today's Menu with the Emiya family.
Right. Fate Stay for Dinner, as you say.
Yeah, Fate Stay for Dinner, yeah. Really charming show. But there's an undercurrent to that I hadn't considered at the time. Is it not a bit strange that, like, Saber, as an English person, finds Japanese food so wonderful and doesn't ever bring up, like, her own cuisine? Now, I'm going to grant you, modern Japanese food is infinitely superior to whatever shit she would have been eating at the time, even as king. Let's be fair.
Gruel.
Hog roast? I don't know. It would have probably been better and probably more hygienic, whatever you want to call it. But I'm building up to this point about propaganda where, like, hey, the King of England thinks this food's amazing. Isn't Japanese food so good? Like, I had hog roast in my time, but this onigiri is to die for.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I was getting at, is that, like, and again, I, like you, really like a lot of Fate, but, like, the characters, and Saber's a great example. I don't think Saber, like, that character bears very little resemblance, not resemblance, but like the relationship to like the King Arthur of, history and such. It is very little. It's almost like, that she's sort of like, that's like a touchstone, but like she exists in this universe and you don't really need to know that much at all or care about the history. And the same can be said of like Hercules and Gilgamesh and Alexander the Great. They, there's not this like amazing relationship to the folklore. They're these fully realized characters in the Fate universe, and like they're loosely tied, especially when you start getting into the gacha. They're very loosely tied to their historical counterparts.
Oh, whereas, God, let's not even start talking about Leonardo da Vinci.
Jack the Ripper, right?
Oh, fuck! Let's. So, I'm going to be fair and be critical of Fate for that. And let's be honest, like a lot of the characters in the gacha, especially, they are the way they are, character design wise, gender wise, whatever. Not because they can have like a conversation where, say, again, to go back to Saber, like she actually reads up on her own, like the history that's written about her, and then says, well. Like makes commentary about like gender politics, right? It's not there for that. It's hey, cute waifu with like the ahoje on the top and who like enjoys fine cooking from this Japanese boy who could be you. Actually, no, I think that's unfair. Like, I think Shiro is not so much a self-insert because he's too nice. But that's a discussion for a different day.
He's kind of an ass a lot of the time. And I actually should be clear. I personally don't mind a lot of anything that I'm saying about Fate. It's not like a criticism of it. It's just a difference between it and Drifters. Like, I don't mind that it's sort of like Saber is very loosely based on King Arthur. Like in the visual novel, like there's like flashbacks to stuff, but I like my understanding, and maybe it's very wanting here, but my understanding of it is like, I don't know. It's sort of like even that stuff, the historical flashbacks are very much like the interpretation of the author. You know what I mean? Taking some liberties with the text and everything. So, but I don't mind it. I quite like Fate, generally speaking. And I just wanted to be clear about that the Fate hate is from you, my friend. I'm pointing at you.
Hey, I actually generally like. As I say, I like Fate, but there are things I can roundly criticize it for. Mostly that it's gacha for a start. Let's be fair. It has fully embraced its own gacha nature. And that, most of the time it is interested in selling characters who, like Olminu from Drifters, have only two reasons for existing in the narrative that they're in. Let's be clear here. Right, is it my turn for a talking point?
It is now your turn, yes, sir.
Right, okay, I'm still holding off from talking about propaganda because I'm teasing you all of it. Just teasing. Let's talk about bad comedy inserts, specifically the ones where everyone starts like appearing in this weird background and has their teeth gritted. What the fuck is that?
Mutter. Mutter.
What is it? What am I meant to find funny about this sudden weird like shift from like the ultra gritty, overly dark art style to I don't know. It's like you got the guy who did Peanuts and like got him on acid and then said draw an anime shit involving Oda Nobunaga. I'm like, what the fuck is this nonsense? Is it meant to be funny? Like where we see Hannibal like being senile and like asking after raspberries?
That one is I don't think a great example because he's actually trying to show them a battle strategy in a roundabout, silly sort of way. But there's plenty of like where Nobunaga's hair is going in a million directions, and he's kind of waving around like a spaghetti noodle, and just like a wavy tube man, and just being like, what's going on?
Well, clearly he missed his calling for advertising for car dealerships. Then,
yeah, exactly. Yes.
Never mind. I okay, look, I'm going to be honest here. I'm a damn dirty gaijin. I'm a British guy. I'm as white as the fucking snow that like sometimes drops on this miserable country I come from. I'm bald. I've got a beard. I look like all those memes you see of like people pointing in the distance or like, you know, shrieking like, you know, when like I look like that fucking guy. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. I've dealt with this, I swear. So I'm probably in no position to comment on what I suspect is very much a cultural thing here. This is probably something that I suspect is very Japanese in its humor and that like Japanese people find amusing. I can only, however, speak to my own reaction and say that I found a lot of it just utterly baffling. Like, you've got backgrounds with pineapples on them. Why? Am I looking at a wallpaper catalogue now? Is that what's going on? And there was one particularly egregious moment in the final episode where I think they had a breakaway from the fight between Toyo and Ghost Samurai. And they were having I don't remember who even was a discussion, but they cut away to one of these moments where the art style completely changes and it completely kills the momentum that's coming from that fight. Like, it's a complete tonal whiplash and just deflates what's going on. This should be like the ultra serious end of the season where Toyo might actually potentially die here. Could you believe it? But no, we're gonna have this goofy art style come in. And I just didn't care for it any time it popped up. It was just distracting, jarring, and I didn't laugh at any of it. I don't get it, but again,
right.
That is the point, though. Me personally, I don't get it. So take it for what you will.
So when I watched this show while it was airing, I was in full agreement with you. I was very put off by these scenes in which, like Shadon is saying, it seemingly from nowhere, with little warning, there's like a hard cut from, you know, the character design and backgrounds and general art direction of Drifters to a lot more, I guess, warm, friendly backgrounds, like you said, with pineapple wallpaper or something. And the characters are much more simply designed, much more silly looking, kind of not even chibi versions of themselves, but just very simply drawn. You can tell who they're supposed to be, and it's clearly there to like say, hey, this is a comedy aside. Like you said, this is a little funsy here for whatever reason. You know, I don't know if like, I wish Mark was here so he could tell us if this was in the manga or if this is an anime thing.
Mark probably has a complete explanation. And again, I must stress, I don't get it, but that doesn't automatically make it bad. Although I will contest, as I say, that it's bad in that one specific instance because it's just not properly placed. There shouldn't have been any of those moments in the final episode.
I really like it. I like this time watching it, I was surprised because I remember disliking it the first time, but watching it this time, I really enjoyed it. I laughed a lot at it. I mean, now, was I like rolling on the floor, slapping the mat? No. I chuckled. I shook my head and giggled. I enjoyed those scenes some of the time. They definitely helped, I think, undercut Nobunaga, the other scenes that sort of show him as incredibly evil. I think Nobu gets the most of these kind of scenes. At least he's the one that I remember more than
he definitely does.
Toyo or Yoichi. I feel like Nobunaga gets a lot of these, and I think it is deliberate because, I mean, if you took those away from him, he really would seem just like I don't know,
Hitler?
Really super evil rather than like, I don't know, somewhat humanized, kind of goofy. There's just that other side to the character that they develop. Some character development that they showcase in the show.
That. Nope, get out.
Yeah, I wouldn't say. I mean, it's developed. It doesn't progress in any way. It's just there from the beginning and it's there at the end. That's the wrong. That's the wrong word choice by me. A side of the character that they depict in the show. So like, I don't know. I didn't. You know what? I was gonna say I didn't mind them. I actually quite like them. I like the tonal dissonance. It's usually not something I mind in shows. Yeah. So we're diametrically opposed on that.
What a surprise! Well, welcome to Warui Deshou.
Yeah.
Oh god, I have nothing else to add about other than just as I say, I didn't care for it, but I freely admit my alien nature in this respect. So yeah.
Okay. Well, my next point then is, so I said that the beginning of the show was the best bit for me. That's for a lot of different reasons. One of the reasons is that it does this thing really, really well with the battles early on. You know, we mentioned that the sword fighting, the duels, one-on-one combat, not great. At least not great looking. Or great in terms of real jeopardy. But they do this thing where it's the three heroes, the three original drifters, the ODs, and they're like
I see what you did there.
Yes, the and like their ragtag band of elves that they've liberated one village, and they're like against a much greater force, and they have to invade a village and invade a castle from the outside, and take over with smaller numbers. Smaller amount of weaponry, that kind of thing. They're at a distinct disadvantage in terms of raw battle power, but Nobunaga gets to kind of craft and do a plan. He references other battles he's been in. And in this way, it's a little bit like, I wish I could remember the author's name of Akagi and Kaiji, where you sort of get an explanation laid out either at the front end or the back end of some improbable thing happening. And I quite like these scenes in most anime, certainly in those anime I reference. And I like these here in Drifters where you see the battle plan come together and you see the elves do this thing that they should not be able to do. And they liberate more of their brethren and their ladies. And it feels really good because these oppressed people are winning, getting one over on these really arrogant, shithead knights, and doing it through really kind of creative means. And I found all that stuff interesting. And again, I don't think it does this stuff as well after the first few episodes. Because in the middle, it's a few one-on-one fights, and then like more of a like direct confrontation, I would say, for the final battle. And so I think what is good about the battles is, for me, they're early on in the show. And I think the show did it reasonably well and it was entertaining.
Fair enough. Is now the time for me to drop my propaganda hot take?
They put shit in the well.
Oh God, they did. They did. They put shit on the arrows as well.
Just so much human fecal matter.
Yeah,
or elf fecal matter.
I mean, I have a vague awareness of the fact that one can, in theory, make explosives from shit. So whatever. I'm not gonna like go on about, well, actually, the scientific properties of the poop. Like, I'm not going to do that. But your point there is now probably as good a time as any for me to start dropping my propaganda hot take.
Go for it.
Okay, so when I say the word propaganda, I do not mean propaganda as created by government or a state. Propaganda can be created by anyone. Indeed, it's just a generalized term. When we hear the word propaganda, we tend to think of the products as created by a state rather than the general acts of creating propaganda or the general output that leads to it. I am of the opinion that Drifters is propaganda in that kind of way, that it's, again, not a state-driven thing or anything like that. But it is just simply the products of a person who clearly has a great fondness for Japanese military history, to the point where they need to accentuate and overblow like its importance. Now, just to be clear here, like, my knowledge of Japanese history is pathetically limited. But even then, it still felt shockingly transparent to me what was going on here. For example, I mentioned before about how, why does it feel like Toyo never is in any danger of like being injured or dying? And this is the same question, believe it or not, as why do Nobu's tactics never fail? Because the characters are not allowed by the right to fail, because they must always be awesome. They must always be good at what they do, because that is part of the idea of propaganda. Propaganda, when it comes to military, is about, hey, we're awesome, and that's the end of it. There is no fallibility. There is no weakness. Now, I'll be fair here, by the way, because this, funnily enough, is something that came to my mind. I want to just bring this up as an amusing comparison. I've never seen the movie I'm about to reference, but I have read about it, and I was reminded of it the moment I saw the aircraft carrier pop up in the opening. I'm referring to the film The Final Countdown, not the song by Europe, the film. And the film is about the USS Nimitz, and it gets teleported through time to the day before Pearl Harbor. The Nimitz, by the way, is a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, and it was made in conjunction with the US Department of Defense. So they had like a lot of footage of it, and there's an interesting idea in that film, from what I've read, where, hey, should we change history or not? Because we have a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. We could easily stop Pearl Harbor single-handedly. No problem. But really, from what I've read, it was more about, well, US military propaganda, essentially. Hey, look at how awesome our aircraft carrier is. This film was from 1980, just for context. So that's why Toyo ultimately cannot be allowed to lose or even show any sign of losing any of his fights. Why Nobu's tactics never fail. Why there's such emphasis placed on the use of muskets, which were a big thing in Nobu's era, and why he insists on making them. Even though, again, I brought up that they were actually a Portuguese import. So there's that. And also, you mentioned about the elves being like liberated, but they were only also liberated by an outside force. Like, it takes a Nobu Ogunaga to save these people from their oppression. Is that not a little bit like cringeworthy in its own right? Like, it's one thing to say, hey, here's a bunch of people who oppress them, but hey, here's another bunch of outsiders who save them. Yeah, this is the whole thing about the propaganda stuff. It cannot allow the characters to be fallible in any way, shape, or form. And that's why the action ultimately is exhaustingly boring. Propaganda is, by its nature, boring because it's preaching to a choir. It's preaching to people who like these characters already and like them as much as the author of the show does. So, or the original material, rather. So, yeah, in my opinion, that's why I think this show is propaganda. And that's all well and good. I'm not going to fault it for being in its quality as a work of propaganda, but as someone looking in from the outside, I just find it a bit cynical and also, just as I say, boring. I wish it, like, and that's the thing, like, it could have been done so differently where, I should also mention, why are all the three main heroes Japanese? Why can there not be a mixture? Would it not have been super interesting, for example, I mean, to pull the example we said before, what if we had Nobu Nobunaga and Saber, well, not Saber specifically, but this Drifter's version of King Arthur working with him? Like, where they have very different perspectives, viewpoints, they clash a lot. You get different culturalist perspectives, all that sort of stuff. Like, hell, bring in Napoleon for the fucking fun of it. Oh, this is also why, when I say it's propaganda, this is why the Japanese fighter pilot exists at all, and also why there's the show of the Japanese aircraft carrier. I mean, it could have so easily been the Nimitz. That would have actually been a funny call to that film I mentioned before, as an example. But, like, they're the ones that are glorified in this work. Even though the funny thing is, like, that Japanese aircraft carrier, by virtue of it being a Japanese aircraft carrier, must have been from World War II. And they got their asses kicked in World War II, last I checked, pre-Pearl Harbor. You know? Like, the Japanese Navy was non-existent prior to, the atomic bombings, and after the Nazis fell. So there's no way of looking at it, in my opinion, other than to say, yeah, this is less interested in necessarily being entertaining, as it's more being unfettered veneration of Japanese historical figures. And the final point I'll make to this is, you don't need to tell me how awesome Obu Nobunaga is, because all of his tactical stuff that he done, all the victories he won, including his strategy of having a 3-line musket group, so they have the first line fire, then the second, then the third in rotation, the tactic he came up with, that I found through just looking him up on Wikipedia, the history already does show that he was competent at what he did. Why does he need additional, duffing up by saying, oh yeah, actually, it would take a Nobu Nobunaga to, save this bunch of, elves? It all just rings very cynical to me, I must say.
Oh, why is because it's fun. I mean, I think it can be, this propagandistic kind of thing, but also be entertaining. I find it rather harmless, and it's kind of pro Japan, pro Japanese history kind of deal. I mean, there's certainly some ways in which that can be harmful, but it doesn't really happen here.
This is not like Nazi propaganda or pro-Nazi stuff trying.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that some bad. Kind of race theory.
Oh, hell no.
Thing or anything like that. It's just these historical figures from my country, me the author, my country, are cool, and I want to have them doing cool shit.
Yeah.
Along with and also against these other historical figures. And
yep.
I mean, that concept, there's a lot of mileage to that for me. So I found it very entertaining nonetheless. I mean, even though, again, you discover the engine, if you're paying attention to the show, early-ish on, I certainly did, but the show remained still fun and entertaining and silly in a good way to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not going to disagree with you. I just don't think it's to me, a criticism. And to be fair, you said it was not a criticism either.
Yeah. I mean, it knows what it is, and I suppose I can applaud it for that. And as I say, it's not the same way that, in my opinion, the Nazi propaganda is, where it's actively trying to make this, because it was created at the time the Nazis were in power, whereas this is obviously for figures who have long been dead. And so all I can say though is that it just makes it boring. They're always awesome all the time, and I'm I don't care.
It's great. I like them being awesome.
I don't care. I don't find any of this interesting, and I think that one could still make them awesome without having to rely on this cheap tactic. Because what I said before when I talked about the stuff I liked, and Alminu's use of that stone barrier charm. These characters, historical figures though they may be, are encountering something in the diegesis of drifters which they've never seen before, but they have creative ways of using it. That proves these characters are awesome to me, because it's not something that that is purely based on uncritical historical veneration, but rather something demonstrated that's unique to this specific work. That's what sticks out to me. That works.
Sure.
And so drifters might want to play the long game of, well, we're just going to have them always be awesome and whatever, but it's actually highlighted a solution for how one can show these characters being awesome in a way that isn't just hey, it takes a Nobu Nobunaga to solve this, elf rebellion problem, or even let them rebel in the first place.
Right.
The roadmap is there. They've demonstrated it, and that's the bit I liked. So why not have the whole show be that? But that actually ties into something else I'm going to tackle in a minute. So
yeah, I mean, to be charitable to drifters, I mean, we don't know how the rest charity. To be generous, then we don't know how much or how it would sort of change on that front as it goes. I mean, you get the feeling that all this stuff is an opening salvo to like more to come. Like, and it feels like it could be a lot more. We don't really know. And at the very end, even though it is by another Japanese person, Toyo gets beat and bloodied. And Nobu's tactics did fail temporarily until Hannibal came along and demonstrated what to do with the raspberries. And then he was like, oh, wait a minute, I see how it goes. So like, perhaps as it goes along in the manga, there are more situations in which they're under real threat and, possibly perish, some of them, possibly, have near-death experiences. Don't know. But we can only judge the adaptation that has been made up till now. That's what we got. And so, I mean, everything you're saying, in that regard, I guess, stands.
Yeah. One other thing I'll note, does it not strike you also as a bit strange that they're, with the exception of Mitsu, whatever his name is, Nobunaga's assassin, and the one other guy, the majority of the ends are Westerners? I mean, you literally... let's just be blunt here. You have 3 Japanese military heroes of history of some sort or another, military figures, mythological figures even, if you want to call them that, and their main enemy is Jesus Christ.
It is hilarious. I mean, I find all this really funny. I mean, everything you're saying makes me laugh.
Dumb.
Like,
it's
all
dumb.
the ends are Westerners, and all the drifters, most of them are Japanese, except for a few who are off their rocker.
It's dumb. It's rock stupid.
Yes.
But there's just something about it that pushes it, like I said before, with the comparisons to Commando, beyond me being able to enjoy it for what it should be as a farce, to where I'm like, no, there's some... Because you know what it also reminds me of? There's a show that I have seen only 1 episode of. And I never went back to watch any more of it because it wasn't my speed. I didn't find it funny. Have you ever heard of Ferme Rome?
Yes. It's, in fact, the manga for that won the award we were talking about at the beginning of the pod.
Well, that explains a lot. But anyway, for people who have no idea what I'm talking about, Ferme Rome is... I'm trying to describe...
The show about public baths in Rome, isn't it?
It's more than that. Because I was trying to describe the art style, because I think the episodes are only like 12 minutes long a piece or something. They're more like shorts. And they're not animated like regular anime, but that's actually not, I suppose, really relevant, so I'm going to bring up. The premise is, there's a guy from Japan who travels back in time, having visited like a public bath in Japan, to a public bath in Rome. So it's basically hot tub time machine. I'm not even kidding. But every time he visits, he introduces the ancient Romans to a ostensibly Japanese staple. I was going to say invention, but I'm fairly certain some of the things he introduces them to are not like originally Japanese. So one of them, for example, is he introduces them to the idea of bottled drinks with tops on the top, like, corks or whatever. And all I could think of watching the episode, and this is what reminds me of in Drifters, isn't Japan awesome? and that's the thing, like, Ferme Rome is ostensibly a comedy, and I'm sure that, again, this is me, damn dirty, Milky Bar Kid gaijin that I am. Like, it's not for me, I don't get it, it's not written for me, so my opinion is null and void on it. But I didn't find it funny, and that's why I didn't pursue any more of these episodes. But that's why I keep thinking of, like, because I didn't find it funny or entertaining, like, that thought of, hey, isn't Japan awesome, like, stuck in my brain. And it's the same thing with Drifters. Because you're right, on paper saying, hey, here's a bunch of Japanese heroes, including Oda Nobunaga, and they fight Jesus Christ in a world war, that should be amazing. That should be, like, the stuff of, like, anime legend.
Jesus tames a dragon during the show. But I think you just have your guard up when it comes to anime, and you take it very seriously. That's my professional opinion.
Well, my professional retort to you is that I've been leading up to my final point, which is, I said, like, at the start, and then at some points others through this podcast, I think Drifters is batshit in the wrong way, and that's where I'm going to get to in a moment after you've had your next talking point. And that'll explain and hopefully wrap up why this hasn't worked for me.
Okay. So I think 2 more points. So this works out nicely.
Nice.
So just want to talk about the the fun that the show has with like jamming together people from various time periods and, you know, using their like being in the same place to make these jokes. Like, okay, for instance, Count Saint Germain. Count Saint Germain is like kind of a weird figure. Like, he was, I want to say he was like an advisor type guy for a while to some governments, but the big thing I remember about him is that like his name keeps popping up in history literally for centuries. Like, he was seen in the early 20th century. He was also seen in the 1700s, the 1800s, and supposedly he never aged. Like, from like when people first saw him in public life, all the way through down the years when people would see him, he would look the same. So
he was also in, I mean, if you think like he's a sole appearer in Drifters, he of course was in Castlevania Season 3 and Season 4. Maybe not necessarily the exact same right. historical figure, but he was in them, same name.
That's right. That's true. So this Saint Germain, like, he's hanging out with Hannibal in this one scene. And Hannibal is like goofing. They're like, they don't know who he is. Like, Germain doesn't know who he is. And he asks Nobunaga, who is that old man? And Nobunaga's like, it's just some old man. And then cut to Hannibal, like, being goofy and playing with, like, I don't know, berries or something. And then Germain is like, that scares him straight. And it's like, oh, getting old seems terrifying. And so that's the joke, is like, this is what spurred him, seeing old, the senile Hannibal, spurred him to find some kind of like fountain of youth or concoction in which made him not unable, but reversed his aging process and made him young for centuries and centuries. And stuff like that I just find delightful in the show. I mean, there's, we mentioned a few times Gilles de Rais, very minor character in the show. Do you remember Gilles de Rais from Fate Zero, Shadon?
How could I forget? The bug-eyed caster who like basically put children in an oven. Yeah.
So Gilles de Rais was tried and convicted for being a child serial killer.
That explains that historical reference.
Exactly. But also Gilles de Rais was a true compatriot of Jeanne d'Arc. And there is some like precedent for people writing about de Rais that like he was like that his conviction was basically a frame up, that he was railroaded by people in power that didn't like him, forced a confession out of him, and basically just, you know, ruined his reputation and then killed him, and did all this legally. So the show doesn't say that, but the show does this thing where like de Rais loved Jeanne so much in life, and when she died, he was like, oh my God, I have to be reunited with her. She's been burned at the stake, so she's gone to hell, so now I have to go to hell to be with her, so I have to be as evil as possible. And the show puts an ellipsis there. That ellipsis is basically like, I have to do all the horrible things that the historical Gilles de Rais was convicted of, because I love Jeanne so much, I want to go to hell so badly.
Wow.
And that's just fucking wild, dude. That's bananas. And then, you know, they're reunited in this drifter world, and briefly, because he gets turned into, he gets the Lot's wife treatment. He's turned into salt. And that's just weird and strange, and it deals with some very dark subject matter, but like, again, because it's centuries and centuries old, it just makes me laugh. I'm like, what the fuck, drifters? Like, just craziness. So, I mean, that kind of thing is something that I found to be a constant source of delight in the show. Just like these characters bouncing off of each other, and like I said, being sort of true to their histories to a greater or lesser degree, and like, you know, having all these jokes and like weird takes on different parts of their history. I just found it all very interesting and pretty amusing and fascinating.
Fair enough. I can't fault you for that. What I can fault the show for, though, to move on to my next and final talking point. So, I've said many times throughout this podcast that I thought Drifters was batshit in the wrong way. And what do I mean by that? Because, by example, Doc, would you agree with me? And I think this is a pretty uncontroversial and people have like a good consensus on this. Would you describe JoJo's, say part 4, to pick one out specifically, as batshit insane?
How many times do we have to say this? I've never seen JoJo's part 4. We've had this discussion on pod.
Look,
I've seen the first part. I've seen the first, most of the first season of Stardust. I haven't seen the Egypt arc. I would, from my memory,
Battle Tennessee. Part 2, batshit. Okay. Would you say part 2 is batshit insane?
I wouldn't. I don't mind. That's not my memory of it. It was certainly you know, its own brand of silliness. And I enjoyed it.
Okay. Right. Anyway.
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you off.
I am of the opinion that
watch
JoJo's... Okay, yeah, let's use Baki. Baki is batshit insane. Yes. I haven't actually seen that admittedly, but... Alright. The thing is, shows that one could describe as batshit insane are not batshit insane in the same way. Like, I describe, for example, the Ginga Weed show as batshit insane from what I've seen of it.
It's the dog show?
Yes. Just,
listen.
I mean, there's talking dogs fighting bears in a war.
This is a Disney thing. This happens every year in America. They release a new movie with talking dogs. Sometimes they're fighting a war, but sometimes not.
Do the talking dogs fight bears?
Sometimes.
In bloody warfare?
Listen, all right, have you read Watership Down?
I haven't, but I know of what happens.
So good.
Yeah, that's fucked up. Okay.
Rabbit War.
Okay,
yes.
So anyway, I mean, also this is the BBC's Farthing Wood. Fucks up shit happens in that. Holy shit, that scarred my childhood. Anyway, never mind. I'm going to move away from that. So, in my opinion, Drifters is batshit, but it's batshit in the wrong way. What do I mean by that? Well, the ways it's batshit are there's a lot of poop in it.
Yes.
So there's literal batshit, although not bat guano. It's just like they make explosives from poop, and there's like poop
bombs,
stuff.
And they dip arrows in poop, and they put poop in the well so that the soldiers can't drink. The opposing soldiers can't have fresh water. It's a lot of it's a strategically deployed poop.
Yeah, there is the inclusion of Jesus Christ himself. That alone is pretty out there. There, of course, are dragons in it. Briefly, I should admit. There's one. Yeah,
they're not in there as often as I would like. They do fight. Yeah. The Japanese fighter pilot does shoot them up. And that's a pretty cool moment.
For 2 minutes or something.
It is a scene in an episode, yes. Enough of that, sure.
Yeah, and there's also all the weird comedy scenes. There's the jokey jokes with Omori. That's the kind of batshitness I'd say. And also just Toyo's general attitude. Where he's just basically insane and just wants to cut people's heads off. That's the way I describe this show as batshit. But it's also, in my opinion, very, very tame in its fantasy setting. Because the thing that Drifters does that Fate does not is it introduces, wider conflicts, and it has fantasy creatures. Now, I'm not going to say Fate doesn't have any fantasy creatures. No, I know that's not true. But rather, they're not tied to any specific person or servant or drifter or end or whatever, but rather they're just a feature of the armies that are floating around here. But a lot of it is also just painfully generic. We have elves and we have dwarves. The elves do archery and the dwarves build things. I've seen that so many fucking times now. It just feels dry to me. And this is the thing. I've said before that for me this show needs to go more batshit in a different way. And so having brought in the fantasy element of dragons, why are we not seeing some more crazy shit out there which melds like the idea of modern or like even like warfare back then with fantasy stuff? I've suggested some stuff to you in the chat, and I've also said it elsewhere. Like, you know what I want? I want like 2 stories tall Cyclops who have tank-sized sniper rifles. That'd be funny because it's a Cyclops using a sniper rifle. How does that work? That'd be amusing, but it'd be something different. Or how about like a Beholder who's like got like a British accent and a top hat, and he's like directing troops in a trench? Like, mix your shit up super hard, in my opinion, for this. Like, make it super fucking crazy. Like, you know that Gatling gun? Have that on the back of a dragon. And then just have, like, you know, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid riding on the back of a dragon, raining death from above with this Gatling can. They're just cackling like maniacs. You need to go to 11 with the fantasy elements in this one. Like, really start mixing shit. Or even bring in, like, we mentioned Black Lion another time, if I recall correctly.
Oh, so good. Yes.
Yeah, which is dumb and stupid in its own right, and it's
Great.
also just logically consistent. But, like, throw some stuff in like that. You know, you've opened the door here by including these fantasy elements of dragons, dwarves, or whatever. Go beyond that. Go beyond the obvious. Go beyond the cliche. Go beyond, like, the stuff we've seen before. Start really mixing your shit up. Get creative with it. If it had done that, then I think I would have probably broken through that, like, ceiling of being trapped, like, by thinking this is just propaganda. Like, this is... and again, I must stress, that's not state propaganda. That's just, like, someone really trying to sell his, like, own, like, you know, appreciation of Japanese history. Like, really go ham on this stuff. Go all in. And I would have been happy with it then. I want some crazy fucking shit in this show. I'm actually genuinely surprised. Like, I mean, as much as I've, like, said, like, my own, like, Cyclops with sniper rifles example, I'm actually surprised there wasn't even any, like, giants in this show in general, given that this show followed Attack on Titan by 3 years. You'd figure it would want to ride the dovetails of that a little bit. But that's my point, though. Like, I mean, you've also got the aircraft carrier, which doesn't feature in this at all.
Yeah, it immediately crashes so that it can't be some kind of advantage for the drifters.
But you can ride that any which way you want, so like you can throw all sorts of stuff in. I mean, I was thinking of Civilization of all things, where you've got shit like Gandhi, like nuking fucking, you know, places, like, and all sorts of stuff, and you've got like native spearmen like fighting an aircraft carrier. Go hog wild. Don't feel restrained. Like, this is a battle in a new world war, and it never felt like it got past a Lord of the Rings fan film for me. It so just felt so weak and lame in that respect.
So I think that while that will be fun, I think the desire for that in Drifters misunderstands what Drifters is. Because I think it's not necessarily trying to create a new world with its own unique feel. Independent. What it's trying to do is make something fun and I guess novel out of bringing together a bunch of things that we do know that don't belong together. And I think having a sort of rote fantasy world is part of that. I think adding all the crazy stuff on top of that is the spice. You know, I mean, Jesus gets to command an army of orcs and dragons. Like, I mean, to me, that is as bonkers as a Cyclops shooting a sniper rifle. Just conceptually, it's insane. Like the fact that he would turn against humanity because humanity rejected him, or that Jeanne d'Arc will be a fire wielder. Like, you know, you have like, is it the jets fighting the dragons and just fucking what's his face? Rasputin has a superpower of like, I don't know, he can project himself somewhere. Like magic is a thing. Like you said, you have the stone creation stuff. But like it also doesn't necessarily want to pull in too much modern weaponry, because then, you know, like you pointed out, like then the Japanese characters would be easily defeated because they don't really understand it. and they're just dudes.
I mean, there's no modern Japanese weaponry really period after World War II anyway because of the abolition of the army. So you're kind of handicapped there. But,
well, they have the JDS, the National Defense Force.
Yeah, but that isn't showy though, is it? That's the thing.
Well, it's not about being showy. It's just because like
this got the aircraft carrier in the opening and it doesn't even do shit. It's totally this as far as
I don't know, but well, it's for later. It's for later.
For later, fuck's sake.
It is. Well, it is because it's in the opening, but it's not used in the anime. So there's clearly meant to be more. Because that dude is sitting in a room with someone else at the end credits, as in like we're about to get him. But I just think like where we are right now. I mean, I don't think that bringing in a weapon that could easily defeat Toyohisa is like what the show feels is in its best interest. And I mean, it is in that way it's constrained, but like a dude summons the ghosts of all his Shinsengumi brethren that were killed by the rebels to fight, this member of that clan who preceded him by 200 years. I think there is so much conceptual batshittery in this show that if you just stop and think about what's happening, it's totally not just bonkers. It's off the wall bananas. And like, I think it is batshit, but I don't think it's like moment to moment spectacle in the same way that like Die Buster is, or that Baki is just always one-upping itself. Baki is with like fights in a phone booth and like his dad flexes his back muscles and there's a demon face in it. Like just all that wackiness that's just always happening. Like this show is just doing things in a different way than that. For me, it's plenty bonkers, but it's just not spectacle. It's more like the idea of what's happening at any point. If I stop and think about it, I'm like, good God, this is so fucking dumb. It's great. But now that, that can only get some people so far. Some people still are going to want entertaining one-on-one duels, well-animated action scenes, and like the show falls short there. So it's not going to do it for everyone.
I mean, my comparisons to Fate and all that, like, I wouldn't ask for this show to be like Fate, where it is all about the one-on-ones. Like, it says, it's in a brand new world war. So go in on that. Give me some fucking, like, crazy, like, army shit where... I'm reminded a little bit of, I don't know if you saw it or not, Yasuke. The LaShawn Thomas, I think it was, or I can't remember his fucking name.
No, that's correct.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that yet.
There's like army scenes where it's like giant like cyclops like that shoot death lasers out their eyes and stuff like that. And obviously this is supposed to be set in Japan, but it's clearly not based on any historic. But I was like, holy shit, there's some crazy stuff going on in here. So I'd have been okay with that. And I'm not going to deny, of course, like that there is the stuff you mentioned, like the fact that Jesus has got like dragons in his army. But those are so, to my mind, like infrequent. Like the majority of the show is our three heroes leading a bunch of elves and then a bunch of dwarves against...
I know, isn't that's fucking ridiculous?
Lazy?
No, it's not lazy. Are you kidding me? Like these heroes from Japanese history, like liberating elves and dwarves is wild to me.
I mean lazy in the sense like that's all it is. Like I've seen enough elf stuff, I've seen enough dwarf stuff to last me a lifetime. Can we not get a bit more buck wild here or do something different?
Well, that's what I mean. That's what I think I'm not articulating clearly enough, that the fantasy world it's almost like its own historical character. It's almost like a King Arthur or something like that. It is a character. It is something that has a history. It is well established and we know it. It's not like anything... Drifters didn't make anything new with its fantasy world because it wants to combine and remix, like mush all these things together that we know, and the results would be what they are. Does that make sense?
It it's not enough for me to like say that, because I honestly like I watched those episodes, and part of the reason I found them boring is just like, here's elves and here's dwarves and that's all we've got, and they're going to do the things that they've been established to do in tropes before. And look, I'm not saying that's always going to be a bad thing, but I just wish the show had just gone in a different direction. And maybe that's just me. I admit that. Mm-hmm. I admit I didn't find this show all that appealing, and maybe that's just wish fulfillment on my part. But I can only speak to my reaction, which is I was bored throughout much of it. And part of the reason was because for much of the show, it was just, we're going to liberate elves and dwarves from a racist government. And I've seen that a million times before and done better. I mentioned Flotsam, for example, from Witch 2, and indeed much of the Witch 2, depending on how you play it, is that story, except it's done better. Granted, it's not an anime, but yeah, I was just like, it just washed over me.
Yeah, I mean, I think, need characters that in the fiction that you're reading are fleshed out, developed, are more, have more depth and stuff to them like that. Maybe that would have made you sort of more invested in what's happening, because like this is sort of like those times where like what am I thinking of here? I can't think of a good example, but we've talked about other anime before that like rely on knowledge outside of the source material. And I mean, that's very much a thing here. Like, it's counting on your interest in knowledge of and excitement over all these characters, all these things from outside the source material coming together here on screen. And it's not like wasting time or spending time, however you want to put it, like trying to make them interesting in the fiction itself. It's just like, here are these characters, and if you don't find them interesting already, or the idea of them fighting on a chessboard interesting in and of itself, I could definitely see being bored by them. But I mean, even yet and still, my final point is that like, so I didn't really know anything about Toyohisa before coming into this. And I actually really, really liked his character. I enjoy the really hot-blooded, battle-crazed male protagonist. He was a ruthless killer, but he had principles, goddammit. He had a code that he stuck to. And was it a sort of a sexist code at times? Sure. The Wu Fei, like, I don't kill bleeding hearts or women. But way less annoying. It's like, oh, you're a lady, Jeanne d'Arc? I'm not going to kill you. And for some reason, having him say it in the way that he said it, because he's not a smarmy kid who's full of himself and thinks he knows everything. He's just a dumbass who's really good at fighting, who kind of knows he's a dumbass. It didn't like upset me in that same way. I was like fine with it. I'm like, oh, you're so misguided. That's sweet. But like,
I have to stress again. I'm not upset by this. It's just I'm bored by it.
No, I thought he had some really cool unifying speeches. Like, I really enjoyed that aspect of his character, like bringing people together. That cool moment where like the elves didn't want to help the dwarves because of their, very storied kind of feud. And he just left. He was just like, well, if you guys won't do it.
Is this the point where I slip in the clip from Lord of the Rings where he said, if I knew I was dying side by side with an elf?
Exactly.
And he goes, what if you died side by side with a friend? Aye, that's I could do.
Exactly. And so dude just leaves Toyohisa, and like, then they slowly start trickling out to follow like his conviction. At that point, he knew no speech he made could move them, but like he was just going to take action. And then one, his closest elf buddies followed him, and then the rest did. And things like that. I don't know. I just really enjoyed his character. He was upbeat and goofy and single-minded. Things that I enjoy in the protagonist of this sort of thing. Maybe a little bit like Man from Promare, Firefighter Man.
Oh.
And there was some interesting foreshadowing very, very blatant foreshadowing, of course, but like, you often had Nobunaga commenting on his personality and how he could potentially exploit those weaknesses. And so you're thinking, you said this earlier, like maybe Nobunaga turns, right? At some point. And you could definitely, like the seeds have been planted for that. And I just found all that stuff really neat. And I liked his character a whole bunch. So, yeah.
It was one of the most entertaining parts of the show, but it wasn't enough to make me care about it, unfortunately. But yeah, I've said my piece on it. Like, I think that in a different, scripted differently, like you could have done it, as you say, like where it is character focused, I'd have enjoyed that more. Or you could have abandoned that entirely and then just gone more crazy all the time, and I'd have enjoyed that more as well. But it didn't do either. It was just, I say, very middle of the road, very average, very... I just didn't care in the end.
So is that your final thought? Because I've said all my main points.
There we go. Yeah, I'm done. I've said all I wanted to say.
Well, I mean, just to sum it up, I think this is a great ride. And if the caveats I mentioned a couple hours ago don't deter you, then, and Shadon mentioned too, don't deter you, then, I mean, I think I'd totally recommend the show if anything we've said, seems appealing. It tickled me. It tickled a part of my brain. And anytime, like I said, I stopped and thought about what was going on, I just had to shake my head and be like, oh my God, I can't believe this shit is happening. Not perfect because of, deficiencies in the action, animation, and direction, and some of the general art design, and it can start to lose steam a bit as it goes because, Shadon has mentioned this, like it's very straightforward. It kind of, you see where it's going, it knows where it's going, and it goes there. And if you're not on board with the concept early on, it's probably not going to do anything for you. But if you want some, hot-blooded sword fighting stuff, some like weird historical juxtapositions, some goofiness, general air of camp and wackiness, without, that's all conceptual. It's not a spectacle. It's not on that level of Die Buster. We're like, oh God, she just threw a black hole at someone, or you know what I mean? So I don't know. For me, it's really good. It's entertaining. It's a lot of fun. And I hope people get something out of it. And Shadon, I definitely am sorry that it bored you. I was not looking to
don't need to,
pardon me.
You don't need to apologize. Like it was.
I was not looking to inflict pain upon you necessarily either. I thought you might really, really hate it. And then part of me thought like you'd have a lot of fun with it, but I did not expect you to be bored by it. But to be fair, I was only going off my memories of the first 4 to 5 episodes. So,
dude, you don't need to apologize. I mean, the thing is, like, for all my gripes, like, it's still fun talking about it. Even like when we've done terrible shit before, and this will probably remain true as long as we do the podcast. Like, it can still be interesting to talk about our differences and where we think it's gone wrong. Like, once I clicked on my thoughts about like how, hey, this is very much propaganda, like it became a fascinating thing to look at in its own right. And if you want my final opinion, well, let's put it this way. Only one of these two things are true. Either I'm full of shit or the show is. And the only way you're going to find that out for sure is by watching it yourself for a couple of episodes.
Hey. There you go. Well, I think that's it. I think Drifters is in the books. We've done it. Shadon, do you want to reveal to the people your picks for our next podcast, or do you want to save that?
I do indeed, as a matter of fact. Okie dokie. So I don't know when we're going to get around to doing this, to be honest. We'll figure out the date at a later point. But we are rotating between doing anime and non-anime. So we've done our anime slot, which is Drifters, and therefore it means I get to pick the non-anime one next time around. Hey. And what are we going to do? Well, we are still going to be tackling animation, and I've wanted to start leading into talking more about animated superhero stuff. Specifically stuff that has got a good reputation, and to really tackle what makes it work. Because I like anime a lot, but there's a lot of decent, if not good, West animation out there as well.
Oh yeah.
I grant you though, admittedly, that seems to have been more in the past than present. But then again, some people will also say
no
that
way, no,
no, stop. I mean, with superhero stuff.
Ah, okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
I mean, with superhero stuff specifically, because I know people bring up like BoJack Horseman, for example, or Tuca and Bertie, but
She-Ra.
yeah, all that stuff. But I mean, anyway,
universe.
To the point in question. What I mean to say is that I've wanted to cover some animated superhero stuff for a while, and talk about it in more depth, because I also have quite a history of it. It's one stuff I started watching when I was younger, and I've grown up with,
right.
And so it's fascinating to review that. So without further ado, I'm going to reveal that our first look into the world of animated Western superhero stuff. We're doing a twofer. We're doing two films,
double feature,
both of which I am of the opinion are the absolute exemplars of the portrayal of their particular superheroes that feature in them. I don't think you'll find better material anywhere, in my opinion, at least as far as animation is concerned, or even live action for that matter. I won't really speak for the comics, because I don't read comics, because I think they're usually crap, but that's beside the point. I don't think you'll find a better example or a better distillation of what these two characters are about in their two respective films. So we are doing a double bill in a single podcast of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the 2018 film, if I recall correctly, which has had a substantial impact. I must say, outside of its release, it's responsible for, at the time of recording, the as of yet unreleased but very much hyped Spider-Man Far From Home. There's no way that you can say that Spider-Verse wasn't responsible in part for that film's conception, plot-wise. And in of itself is a work of art, in my opinion. But the counterpoint to that, crossing over from Marvel to DC, we're going to be covering an older animated film that also, like Spider-Verse, was criminally underrated at the time it came out and not given the appreciation it should have been in terms of box office returns. I am referring to, from the DC animated universe, Batman, Mask of the Phantasm, which is also, in my opinion, an absolute work of art.
It's so good.
It is, in my opinion, better than pretty much any live-action adaptation of Batman that came out around the time it was created or since. Granted, some live-action versions of Batman are not intending to be like Phantasm. I mean, Adam West is its own kettle of fish. But yeah, Spider-Verse and Phantasm are both incredible films, and in my opinion, both the perfect distillations of their respective characters, and we're going to talk about why that is when we cover them next on our future podcasts on that. So definitely look forward to that. I'm super pumped for it. I've got a lot of thoughts already on both films I want to cover. So yeah, keep an eye out for that.
You probably have heard many of Shadon's Mask of the Phantasm thoughts over the years if you're a long-time listener. I know you brought it up on a number of occasions. I've seen both films more than once, so this will be a first-time viewing for neither of us. And I'll just say up front, I am also very excited. My opinion, Mask of the Phantasm has the best visual gag in an animated thing ever. Ever. With the sausage.
Oh, yes.
It's the greatest. It cracks me up every time. So look forward to that, folks, sometime within the next few weeks, as we try to get back on something of a regular schedule. We had wanted to have a guest on for this pod, but they were not able to make it. We delayed a couple times and just did not end up working out. And holidays in America are coming up soon, and then Christmas. And so lot is coming up. We're going to try to get some episodes out, but certainly at the turn of the year, we will definitely get on the 2 episodes will be released each month. So apologies for the extended delay after the end of our episodic analysis series. Shadon, if people want to get in touch with you on Twitter, how can they do this?
They can do that by donating to our Ko-Fi, because we need to mention that as well.
Hey, true.
So, I'm going to come up to you now, mug in hand, and say, fill my Ko-Fi. Ha ha, easy jokes, easy. But yes, if you've enjoyed this podcast and you want to show your appreciation financially, feel free to pop over to ko-fi.com/Warui Deshou. So that's ko-fi.com/Warui Deshou. You can put in whatever amount you want. Any tips are welcome and appreciated and humbly accepted. So feel free to do so. Entirely up to yourselves, of course. We're no longer gating any content behind a paywall. But nonetheless, if you feel like you want to just drop a little bit in our tip jar, by all means do so. And in turn, of course, if you're listening to this elsewhere and think, okay, don't have the money, but do like these guys, want to support them however I can, well, you can always send me a nice emoji on Twitter if you want, but rather feel free to subscribe to whatever social media service you find this on. We're making our usual call to action shit that you've heard 1,000 times before. Thankfully, this being an audio format, there's no obnoxious subscribe clicky button turning up on the video, so enjoy that. Enjoy being spared that nonsense. But yeah, do feel free to subscribe and like wherever you find us, be it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Pods, whatever it is. Hell, if you find this on a USB stick in the street somehow, I don't know how you've done that, but hey, feel free to thank the person who drops it there if you ever find out who they are. So yeah, do that. As for me, if you want to talk to me in specific, you can find me at Shaden1010 on Twitter. That is Shaden1010. I'll talk about anything and everything except bad videos about Half-Life. I'm being cryptic about that, but believe me, I've had some bad blood about that in the past week. So please don't come at me with your bad Half-Life takes, or any Half-Life takes for that matter. Just don't. Leave it there. But
don't talk
anime,
about Half-Life.
Yes. Talk to me about things, for example, like how I recently watched Perfect Blue, which was fucking great, or Paprika, which was also great, or how I've also this year watched Bubblegum Crisis, Dirty Pair, Iria, the Zeram animation, whatever it's called, and Gunsmith Cats, which are, I mean, you want my anime of the year? It's that period, basically.
You've been delving into the 80s, 90s. I'm a fan. Thumbs up. All that sci-fi
people
channel
say
shit.
People say that era of anime, or even maybe a little earlier, was the best it's ever been. Now, I fundamentally disagree, because I think that the era of anime we have now is a very different beast than what we had then. I don't think they're directly comparable. But I will not lie when I say that kind of stuff that I've just mentioned there is infinitely charming, deeply enjoyable, and we're never going to see anything like it again, and that makes me sad. But, I also think that, in a way, it's probably good we're not going to see anything like that again, because, well, you can't recreate that anymore. We're not in those times, so what can you do? But anyway, yeah, feel free to talk to me about all sorts of crazy shit like that. Just keep your Half-Life shit to yourself. I don't care.
I'll say it's bad that we're not getting shit like that. Feel free to recreate it. Do it. Just do it. Just make it. Start doing it again, please.
You do realize that Disney is making a brand new X-Men cartoon based on the 1990s cartoon. It's going to suck.
I don't want Disney to make Iria Zerum again. I want, Studio Madhouse or Cloverworks or whoever. Not Gynex, but Kara, now that they're done with Evangelion. Make Bubblegum Crisis. That's what I'm saying. I don't want to keep your mitts out of this, Disney. Speaking of Iria, did you watch that with the group, or did you watch that on
privately?
Your own time? Okay, that's cool. Because I remember watching that. It may have even been, in 2020 with the WD Discord, because it was on YouTube at the time on Retro Crush, and it's great. Very quick, what did you think of Iria Zerum? Didn't it rule?
Yeah, it was the shit.
So fucking good.
Yeah. We're not doing a podcast, so I'll keep it super brief. But
not yet.
Whoever voiced Sailor Mercury and Sailor Moon does a damn fine job of voicing a bounty hunter in space. I'll say that much.
God, that show is so
It is
good.
literally the same voice actress.
It is.
Which I was just like, where do I recognize that voice from? Oh yeah. Yeah, you go shoot that alien up, Amy. You go shoot her up real good.
Takes me back to like being 16, watching that on just stumbling upon it on TV. Had no idea, just like click, click. Oh, what's this? Oh, shit. This is amazing. Yeah, love that. We may have to do a pod on that at some point. I am the Subtle Doctor. You can find me on Twitter at the Subtle Doctor. As Shadon said, like, subscribe, follow, share our content. There's the Ko-fi for tips if you so desire. But just tell a friend about us or give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts if you would like to help out the pod and help our discoverability. But I think that is going to do it, my friend and my friends out there listening. Thank you so
Time
much.
for us to drift off.
Yep, we're going to drift away now. Thank you so much for listening. As ever, if you've been A1 since day one, or this is your first WD, we appreciate you and love you from the bottom of our hearts. And until next time, he's Shadon, I'm the Subtle Doctor. This has been Warui Deshou saying, embrace each other, everyone, to the ends of the universe.
Good night.
Bring back the